This is dedicated to the homies that was down since day one. Welcome to Drop D.
Welcome to Quick Hits, a JFK assassination news and notes podcast with your hosts, Rob Clark and Doug Campbell.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Quick Hits, a JFK assassination research news and notes podcast. This is episode number 51. I am Doug Campbell. I am merely 50% of your hosts. Please welcome the other 50% from the Lone Gunman podcast, Mr. Rob Clark. What up, Rob?
What's up, Doug? Big Bad Bob at you. Been a hot minute, but I'm glad to be back here with you and doing this show today. I'm excited, buddy.
Bro, back in our shared space right here. That's right. Cool. How you been, man? What's the weather like? I know the weather on the eastern part. You guys getting some flooding up there in your neck of the woods, I hear.
Yeah, we got a little bit of rain this week. It's just been colder than all get out, and a little windy. But it's not too bad. It's doable.
I think about the same we had then. Some wind, some rain, and lots of cold weather. I think next week's going to get shittier for us. They're calling for snow, which I wouldn't care if I ever saw another fucking snowflake. Yeah. Like,
right.
Oh, yeah, man. No way. I'm tired, man. I've been working my ass off, dude, lately. We've been busier than hell. Wow.
I hear you.
Well, all right, man. They don't want to hear us talk about our stuff and whine and complain, do they? No, they want to hear about research. JFK assassination research. Welcome again, guys. We're glad to have you here. We have got so damn much to talk about. It's ridiculous. We're going to try to cram it into a couple hours for you. We have special reports. We got some weirdness, some dumbness, and we have a new what we're hoping will become a semi-regular segment with a guest commentator here on Quick Hits coming up later in the show. But first, Rob, buddy, I think you need to lead us off. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Doug. I got some breaking news, if you will.
Special report?
Yes, special report.
Special report here on Quick Hits. Take it away, Rob.
Doug, I regret to inform you and our lovely listeners that the JFK assassination research community has lost another brother in the form of Edward J. Epstein.
Oh, my goodness.
First-generation researcher.
I had not heard.
Yes. A little bit about Edward Epstein. You know, he's one of these first-generation researchers. And he was a graduate student at Cornell University when he published his first book, Inquest, in 1966. And he was part of the whole deal, you know, with getting Oswald exhumed.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he went ahead to get his doctorate at Harvard, and his thesis was about his research into the Kennedy assassination. So this guy got his doctorate using JFK research. He went on to write I believe it was three books: Inquest, Legend, and Counterplot. And he did a lot of interviews with James Jesus Angleton. And I believe he and not, what's that tool's name? I can't remember his name.
You're going to have to be more specific.
Right? The guy that claimed he was at George DeMorchio's door when he shot himself.
Oh, Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly. Yeah, jerk off.
I'm pretty sure
Bill O'Reilly claimed
Epstein was there.
Was Epstein at the front door?
Yeah, I think it was Epstein.
That I didn't know. I knew that O'Reilly claimed that in his book, but there's there's like actual videotape of him live on the air in Dallas, Texas, reporting the death of DeMorn Shield. You know, he was not in Florida. It's bullshit. But I did not know that Epstein was there. I knew that about an hour earlier, Gaten Fonzie had the author of The Last Investigation and HSCA investigator had attempted to deliver, a congressional subpoena to testify to DeMorn Shield, and DeMorn Shield wasn't home that afternoon, like an hour before the suicide. He left his card and said, "Well, tell him I'll be back," and then his body was found. But I don't know if I'd heard about Epstein being there. That's interesting.
Yeah. And he also wrote a book in 2013 entitled The JFK Assassination Diary, My Search for Answers to the Mystery of the Century. And, he passed away January 9th of this year. And at the ripe old age of 88. So, Godspeed.
Yes.
Edward J. Epstein.
Was he not the publisher of Inquest?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow, man.
That was his first book. He did the Inquest.
Like a newsletter.
Was it? No, it was a book. And the Legend of Lee Harvey Oswald and Counterplot.
I thought I may be wrong. Well, there were so many newsletters back then, research type newsletters going around. I thought he had a newsletter called that, but I'm probably wrong.
It says he published the book Inquest, an influential critique of the Warren Commission probe into the JFK assassination. Yeah. So,
well, you know what? Rest in peace, sir. And man, that guy. Thank you for all you did. That's really really tough to hear. Sad to hear, man, for sure.
Yep, another one bites the dust. Rest in peace, sir.
Rest in peace, sir. 100%. 100%.
All right, Doug.
All right.
You ready for the first topic of the day?
I am ready, sir.
All right. I came across a very interesting document, Doug, and it's marked secret all over it. Secret all over it.
I already want to hear it.
Yeah. And agency memorandum for the CIA. And it concerns operations against Cuba prior to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Okay? And I'm assuming someone at the agency demanded this document because they were asking questions.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. I'd never seen it before. And so I came across it. And it's bored down into a couple sections here. The first one is the introduction, and it says, agency planning and operations directed at Cuba during the latter part of 59, 60, and early 61 were almost totally devoted to the development of paramilitary operations, which culminated in the Bay of Pigs invasion on 17 April 61. During this period, major efforts were devoted to training a paramilitary force, formation of a Cuban exile organization in Miami, to direct opposition activities, and to provide future Cuban leadership, and a propaganda campaign designed to rally opposition to Castro in Cuba and elsewhere in Latin America. So, it's no secret, what the CIA was doing. Well, now we can look back with hindsight and know what they were doing during the Bay of Pigs and leading up to that.
Yes, sir. The scope of the secret Cuban War, which is
That's right.
which is central to this thing that we study, in my opinion.
Yeah, but some of these details I did not know before, Doug. So,
oh man, lay them on me.
So number 2 here says some of the actions initiated during 60 and 61 continued following the defeat of the agency-supported Cuban Brigade. For example, prior to the break in diplomatic relations between Cuba and the U.S. on 3 January 61, CIA had maintained a station in Havana, Cuba.
Right.
This station recruited and trained intelligence agents and procured and cached communications equipment to form a stay-behind net to provide intelligence on Cuba following the break in diplomatic relations. Following the Bay of Pigs defeat, this net continued to function, providing information on Cuba via radio communication and Latin America diplomatic pouches. Excuse me. Radio Swan is another example of an operation which continued after the Bay of Pigs. It was established in the spring of '60 as a component of the anti-Castro propaganda campaign. It continued in this role until its termination in 1968. So they had a radio, I guess a radio station down there that they had going until '68.
And they had this is putting me in mind of the Amots, which was a group within a group within a group run by David Morales of the CIA. I talked a little bit about on the last episode of the Dallas Action. They were I can't remember the number, but all around that same time they're monitoring radios and monitoring radio transmissions and codes and all this stuff, and it was like something like 1,800 reports a month that they were generating, of intelligence, and you have to go back and listen to it, but it kind of reminds me of, and they were the guys that were in touch with the Stay Behind net in Cuba, if that makes any sense.
Yes, sir. I am picking up what you are laying down, my friend. So, following the Bay of Pigs and in response to administration urgings to do something about Castro, the CIA established a large station in Miami in September of 1961 to continue operations against Cuba. The operations described below were developed and run by the Miami station, many of them still in the developmental stage at the time of the Kennedy assassination. The station initiated three major classes of activities: intelligence collection, espionage, covert action, propaganda, and infiltration, exfiltration actions. It should be noted there was no clear delineation between these activities. An exile organization primarily engaged in propaganda on the agency's behalf might also provide positive intelligence information from interrogation of an exile or provide candidates for an infiltration team to perform sabotage. It should also be noted that infiltration exfiltration actions were undertaken for a variety of purposes such as espionage, sabotage, and to assist defectors. Aside from intelligence collection, all of the remaining activities would constitute forms of covert action. So this next section, Section B, Doug, is entitled Covert Action and Propaganda.
Covert action and propaganda. Yeah, briefly, you noted that many of these operations and these plans are going on at the time of and after the Kennedy assassination. That would include programs like AM Trunk and AM World, which AM World, there many suspicious people, a few suspicious people, and a few very viable suspects were connected with AM World. And I get this information via the wonderful research of Larry Hancock and David Boylan, who is, guys, check his stuff out. He's the AM World expert. But I digress. Sorry, yes. Rob. Go ahead.
As I am the AM Dong expert. All right. Section B.
Yeah, he's an expert on Dong, Momo. I don't know how to take that, brother.
Hey, Section B, Covert Action Propaganda. Number 1, agency-supported Cuban exile organizations. The CIA provided monetary support and guidance to a number of Cuban exile organizations in the Miami area who disseminated anti-Castro propaganda. Some of these organizations came into existence through Cuban Exile Initiative, but they became largely dependent on the CIA to carry on monetarily for their activities, which basically means either the CIA created these anti-Castro Cuban exile groups, or they were organic, but because of the immense funding that the CIA was pouring into them, they became to rely on the CIA to carry out their activities.
Oh, yeah.
Such as the Cuban Student Directorate. Doug? Now, what's interesting here in this document is, I don't know if you can take a gander at this, but so what I just read there is at the top of the page. The rest of the page is redacted, okay? And then page 2 is redacted entirely.
Completely. Okay, yeah.
Page 3.
Blank page.
Redacted entirely.
Blank page.
Page 4. Redacted entirely.
What is the date of this particular release? Do you have the cover sheet?
I have no idea. Page 5. Redacted entirely.
Oh, yeah.
Page 6. Redacted entirely. So there's 6 pages that are entirely redacted in this report. Okay? Which brings us... So that was section B. Okay?
Okay.
Which brings us to section C, since the entirety of section B is redacted.
We might as well move on. Nothing to learn there. Yeah.
Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here at all. Section C is entitled Intelligence Collection Espionage. Number 1, Refugee and Defector Exploitation. Cuban refugees were entering the United States at a rate of 1,700 a week during 1961 and 62. The INS recorded basic biographic data on all incoming refugees. Cards containing this data were provided to the Miami station to conduct a file check for counterintelligence purposes. In reviewing the cards, the station identified refugees who might be used for operational purposes and arranged interviews, which frequently also provided positive intelligence information. The CIA's Domestic Contact Division had primary responsibility for obtaining positive intelligence information from refugees. The DCD interviewed refugees of positive intelligence interest at the Caribbean Admissions Center in Opelika, Florida. These interviews were documented in preliminary information reports, which were provided to the intelligence community and to the Miami station for review to obtain operational leads. Prior to the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of '62, the flow of refugees was large, and it was relatively easy to obtain information on current events going on in Cuba and Cuban exiles that could be utilized operationally. Following the crisis, the flow of refugees decreased significantly. As a result, the station established a section to exploit refugees more intensively, to centralize files on refugees, and to prepare studies on exile groups operating in the U.S.
Man, I'm starting to get another whiff of the Amots, Rob. They, and again, you go back and listen to the Dallas section, guys. We were talking about the number of radio transmission reports, but the number of their job primarily was to card Cuban refugees. They were like the inside, sort of off the books intelligence network, keeping tabs on the Cuban exile community as well.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. Bill Simpich told me this once in an off-the-air telephone conversation. He said, what I would give anything to find those files, the Amot files, Yeah. Because apparently they're just gone.
Well, I believe this next section here is referring directly to what you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
So section 2 says anonymous organization group. During 1960 to 63, this group consisted of between 50 to 100 Cuban exiles who constituted a structured intelligence support group for the station. It performed a variety of functions for the station, and it was the station's prime source of information on Cuban exile activities. It is considered the single most valuable operational activity undertaken by the station. In summary, this group infiltrated exile groups and reported on their activities.
Yes, sir.
B, maintained extensive files on Cuban exiles, exile groups, and Cuban government personalities. Monitored Cuban radio broadcasts and summarized content for the CIA. Produced intelligence reports and special studies. Debriefed refugees. recruited infiltration agents. Section 3, the intelligence net. In mid-62, the agency recruited a former Cuban politician to establish an agent net in Cuba. This individual recruited a member of the presidential entourage, a Cuban working in a foreign consulate, and a third individual. These individuals recruited an extensive net of 150 sub-agents and informants.
Yes, sir.
Which was very productive in reporting information of intelligence interest via the diplomatic pouch of the foreign consul. The high living and immoral behavior of one of the principals attracted the attention of the Cuban Security Service. This individual was arrested and interrogated prior to Christmas 1963, resulting in the arrest and conviction on espionage charges of all the members of the net. And the rest of that page, Doug, is redacted.
Wow. I did not know this. This is, in light of what I studied, some of the stuff I studied for a month, prepping the last, which was a couple weeks ago, this is fascinating to me. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. So, a vast majority of what looked to be one of the, because there was the Amots, right? And there was a group of 100 older Cubans, I believe, and a group of like 100 younger Cubans, and then another group of 50, if I'm getting it right. My notes are actually right around the corner. Well, you know what? Hang on. I did not know they were arrested in such a manner, Rob. That is incredibly interesting to me, but the way the structure broke down, let's see, if I can go back. Hang on, guys. I'm waiting for another file to load. Patience, please.
Hey, Nostradamus, you want to get it together? I ain't got all day.
Hey, man, chill. We're working on the fly here, brother. That's the way we do. Amots. But anyway, no, I tell you what, don't let me interrupt you. I'm getting off way on a tangent. I was going to read something about that structure. But the fact that they all got arrested is complete news to me. And this was what I was going to say is David Morales made a statement in one of these documents about the Amots, Rob, and he said that they received paramilitary and counterintelligence training far in excess of the typical agency employee.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna read that quote to you, but I remembered it. So I'm sorry to derail you, sir. I do apologize.
That's all right. So we got one more section in this report,
yeah.
Section D, and it's entitled Infiltration, Exfiltration Operations. As noted earlier, infiltration, exfiltration operations, which started in mid-62, were undertaken for a variety of purposes, such as to put in place arms and communication caches for use by agents and resistance groups, infiltrate agents to recruit agents for espionage purposes, exfiltrate agents who had completed their missions or for further training or to obtain reporting, exfiltrate significant political defectors, and to commit acts of sabotage. Each of these operations were approved by the special group or its successor, the 303 Committee. They were a major preoccupation of the Miami station, and large amounts of money and manpower were devoted to them. They were executed with varying degrees of success and were frequently aborted because they encountered resistance from Cuban security forces or rendezvous were missed. These operations were supported by a small maritime force, which in 1963 consisted of 3 motherships and 6 smaller vessels. During 63, 88 operations were planned, of which 15 were canceled. Of the operations carried out, 4 involved sabotage, 10 others encountered contact with Cuban forces. Thus, during 1963, the Castro government was aware of at least 14 operations involving infiltration of Cuban coasts and harbors. and it would be logically assumed that the U.S. had a hand in these actions. So basically, Castro knew that the government was fucking with him, using the CIA, and his own Cuban exiles against him.
Yeah, he had some pretty good penetration of the anti-Castro organizations here in the States as well. I mean, it's 100% possible that some of the people that were getting those checks and those bags of cash from CIA, middlemen, cutouts, were themselves Castro agents, and was just informing the homeland about it.
Right.
Hey, I found some of this info, dude, and what you're reading. This is from my prep for the last Dallas action. This is a document I read. This is some of the stuff that the AMOTs did. Penetration of local anti-Castro organizations, penetration of pro-Castro organizations, carding some 200,000 Cubans in a period of 3 months. A section of the AMOTs monitored all radio transmissions. Screening of all persons recruited for the brigade. This AMOT screening of the military trainees really amounted to a field check since various cases were discussed with Cuban sources. The second group was trained by David Morales, one of our viable suspects. 100 selected Cubans. Of 100 thus trained, 61 were sent to the camp in Guatemala for training with the brigade. Only 2 were lost during the invasion, and then he goes on to say that this particular group that you're talking about as well received all training in things like sabotage and explosives and paramilitary things and intelligence training far in excess of your typical CIA employee. And that's or operative. And that's very telling. That's kind of scary, actually.
Well, you got to figure these groups were running pretty much covert and overt operations into Cuba.
Yep.
And, as far as just, I think it was very rare that you had any overt CIA employee operations running like this. You know what I mean? So it makes sense that they would have, trained these guys way more than our own guys, because, they're running into all kinds of different scenarios. Then if you're going in overtly, some of it was covert, but, when you're landing on the beaches, on the coastline of Cuba, and you're running into Castro forces and having to fight them, and at least 14 or 15 of them resulted in failed attempts.
Oh yeah, there was. Look at Felipe Vidal Santiago, the dark-complected man in Dealey Plaza. He was captured and executed. Yeah. He was captured on a raid. Herminio Diaz Garcia, another Cuban exile that many people believe was involved in the assassination. Same thing. I think he was actually killed during a raid as Vidal was captured, then allegedly tortured and then executed by the Cuban military.
Yep. So during 1963, a CIA-trained exile paramilitary group committed 2 acts of sabotage, which inflicted some damage, caused a great deal of commotion, and attracted a lot of publicity. On the 31st of August, 1963, this group attempted to destroy a POL dump in Casildo Harbor using an 81 millimeter mortar cannon and a 75 millimeter recoilless rifle. That's a big ass rifle.
That's a recoilless rifle is pretty much a cannon. I mean,
yeah.
I know a howitzer. I think it's supposed to be a recoilless rifle, isn't it?
I have no idea.
But those things are huge. That's not like wow. What millimeter
for comparison, was it? The Carcano bullet was 6.5 millimeter. This some bitch was 75 millimeter recoilless rifle.
All right, I'm gonna have to while I'm gonna have to Google this real quick while you continue to read. 75 millimeter. Okay.
So unknown to the team, the harbor was under an air defense alert at the time. Shortly after opening fire, the team came under heavy enemy return fire. The team inflicted some damage on the POL dump and hastily departed in 2 small boats. This attack was reported in the Cuban press. And then on September 30th, 1963, this group conducted a commando raid against a large sawmill on the coast of Oriente Province. The sawmill was destroyed and no enemy opposition was encountered. The mill was a main producer of railroad ties. Its loss was felt and noted in a Castro speech when a hurricane destroyed most of the railroad's lines in part of Cuba several weeks later, which they could not rebuild because they didn't have any more railroad ties. So it hurt their infrastructure a little bit as far as moving material around Cuba. And as far as I can tell, Doug, that is the end of the report. And no, I don't have a cover thing. I don't have a date for when this was. I do know I got it off Mary Farrell at some point. It's just one of them things I come across that's interesting, and I print it off and save it for a rainy day, such as today.
Yeah, man. So, yeah.
Sorry, Joe Bax.
Sorry, Joe Bax.
No riff number.
No damn riff number.
I would like to see the unredacted copy of that, though.
You know, for the next segment, I actually wrote down that number. Now I kind of want to not read it. Kind of don't want to read it now. I kind of want to skip over that. I don't know why. I'm just that way. I'm looking at this, actually, the 75 millimeter recoilless rifle, Rob. It looks to be about I'm going to guess 8 feet long. It's on a tripod, and it looks like a rifle bullet that's about 3 feet long.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that running through your middle? Good Lord.
Oh, my God, man. This thing is
that'd blow you in half.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is like the kind of thing they fire at tanks, maybe, you know?
Jesus.
But holy crap. Yeah, man, that's a vicious-looking rifle. Oh, it would absolutely just blow. If you got hit, but it'd blow you in, too. There'd be Rob A and Rob B is what you would have, you know?
You'd have the triple B.
The triple B.
Big would be over here, Bad would be over there, and Bob would be over there.
Over there. With Joe. How is Joey Sidewalk? How's he doing?
He's healing nicely. He's coming along. No skin grafts are needed yet, so that's good. That's a good sign.
Well, I was curious about the release date only because, as we know, these new releases since 2017 have been chock full of stuff that's still redacted. You know,
and this might be one of them. I have no idea, bro.
Yeah, man, I was just curious.
I wish I would have got the riff number at least for this one, so we could look it up now and see if this is just an old redacted copy of something that's been unredacted. But I just thought it was an interesting thing, you know, that it's an interagency report asking, you know, hey, what the hell are we doing down in Jam Wave?
Yeah.
We're just wondering prior to the Kennedy assassination, you know.
It's this Ammott bunch is very interesting because again they were the guys. They were like the Cubans spying on the Cubans for the CIA. And what's interesting about them, the point I made is when we talk about you know theories and hypotheticals and hypotheses about how the setup of Lee Harvey Oswald was accomplished. And the phrase that I've used a lot is that the plotters walked in the footprints of legitimate on the books covert operations. And when I say that, I mean like this.
Right.
The Mexico City Oswald impersonation. The fact that the Cuban consulate and the Soviet consulate were bugged and wired for sound was extremely limited knowledge. It was, I have read and I've had people like Bill Sipich tell me that probably a dozen or less people on the planet outside of the actual people like the Tarasovs the married couple, the Tarasovs, who were the translators. People like that, people actually manning the cameras and changing the film in the safe houses. There were less than a dozen people on Earth that knew that this operation, it was one of the most closely guarded intelligence secrets in the Western Hemisphere, right? Not everybody, that's very limited knowledge. So for the plotters to know, to be able to make the machinations work and send an imposter through there and know that it's going to be, that his phone call is going to get picked up, that his voice is going to get picked up inside the embassy, to plant that, to plant that idea that way. Well, David Morales would certainly be one of the people that knew of this operation, right? So what you do is you just tell one of the Amots, I want you to do this. Go to Mexico City, go here and go here, say this and say this, you're this guy. And it's the perfect way because he's got his own little shadow intelligence network. It's like a Latin American version of the Gellin organization. Really? And and this Amot, it might be Amot 53, Amot 106, we don't know, who perpetrated, hypothetically, the Oswald impersonation. He doesn't even have to know why he's doing it. Yeah. Right? And also, noteworthy, a man named Anthony Forza, who was Morales' deputy, was the guy running the Amots for Morales. In other words, Morales was his baby, but Forza was the subordinate in charge of running the thing for him. And he has been described in documents I've read as a hitman, Anthony Forza. So, keep that in mind, too.
Well, it's interesting, too, that, at this time in 1963, and, prior to the Kennedy assassination, of course, in the summer, you have Oswald trying to infiltrate anti-Castro Cuban exile groups.
Right, exactly.
And forming a pro-Castro group. It just makes one wonder, okay, it seems to me, since the CIA is monetarily funding these anti-Castro groups, all right, that they wouldn't send somebody in there to infiltrate an anti-Castro group if they're funding them. You know what I mean?
Right.
What does make sense is if the FBI were doing this to try to figure out what the hell was going on, as far as, because, honestly, I don't know what the climate was in 1963 in New Orleans, but it seems to me like, a very niche thing for Oswald to be interested in.
Extremely,
in spite of everything going on in New Orleans, this is what this guy wants to focus his energy towards. And it's just odd to me. It's definitely it seems to me to be a directed attack. You know what I mean?
I can't,
as far as what he's doing and trying to.
I see what you're saying. It's so niche, I guess, might be a good word for it.
Right.
That it could not have been his idea.
Like, how newsworthy was this anti-Castro movement in New Orleans in 1963? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know either.
How overt were they? I mean, are they having rallies and shit on the corner? Or are they just meeting in a dark room once a month? I mean,
to read the literature, the assassination research literature, New Orleans was ate up with Cuban organizations, either pro or anti-Castro,
Yeah, but what were they doing that was so influential that they required observation and infiltration? You know what I mean?
Moving money, moving guns, moving explosives. Lots and lots of off-the-book stuff.
But what would this trigger the interest of? It wouldn't be the CIA because they're funding these groups. They know what they're doing. They're training them.
Think about what Peter Dale Scott
leads me
said.
to the FBI.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because Peter Dale Scott made a really fantastic point about the Oswald going to visit Carlos Bringuet, right? And hey, I want to help out. Here's my Marine manual. He said to believe that Oswald was some sort of CIA agent, you got to believe the CIA was spying on itself. That they sent, and then you think, well, now it's like you said just a minute ago. What Oswald was doing, right? I read off just a few minutes ago 4 things that the Amots were doing. The first 2, A, penetration of the local anti-Castro organizations. B, penetration of the pro-anti-Castro organizations in Miami. 2 things that Lee Oswald was absolutely doing in New Orleans.
Right, but you're talking about Cuban exiles on one hand and a white guy who lived in Russia for 3 years on the other hand.
Seemingly
he was a former Marine. So,
but didn't it seem like to you when he starts up the Fair Play for Cuba Committee chapter and they're telling him, nah, that's okay, bro, don't worry about it. And he's like, no, it's done. I have one. And they're like, really, man, we're good. Don't worry about it. But he does it anyway.
Right.
He's trying to infiltrate the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, it seems like to me, Well,
I just went back. Funny you mentioned that because I just went back last night and I found I've always heard the condensed version, I guess, of his interview that he did with Bill Stuckey in New Orleans for the Latin Listening Post thing.
Yeah.
And the entire clip is about 35 minutes long, actually. And I listened to the whole thing, and what he's saying in there is it's really interesting how he talks about his organization, because the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, because it's quite obvious that as Stuckey is asking him about the organization, he's like, well, who's the national secretary? And I was like, well, I don't know. I know the president's V.T. Lee, and he's asking him all these things, and some things Oswald knows and some things Oswald doesn't know. And you also hear Oswald saying that him and 4 other members of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee were handing out literature that was filmed by WDSU. So he's implying that the people that he hired in the post office and paid him $1 a piece to help him hand out flyers, were actually part of his organization. And he was like, well, I can't reveal their names or anything like that due to concerns for their safety, because the Fair Play for Cuba Committee is considered a radical group and this and that.
Well, if I give you their names, the federal government's going to come get them.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I would definitely recommend folks going back and listening. I think I might stick that together along with the radio debate with Bringuer together and stick it out on the Vault thing so everybody can listen to it, entire thing.
Well, when you do, you make sure to let me know, because I would love to listen to it. And I know that if the audio needs touching up and made to sound a badass, I know my man Rob's going to take care of that, and it's going to be a great listen. But yeah, let me know.
Yeah, we'll do.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that's it for that one.
All right. Rob, I got sent something by a listener that I thought I would pass on to you and the rest of the listeners. You want to check it out? It's a document. It's not a long one. Not a long one.
I thought it was a dick pic. You're so disappointing.
Wow, man. You may. I've never seen Momo stop eating a pastrami sandwich and just let the motherfucker just stop midair. And he fucking turned to me. He's like,
you never know with listeners like ours.
He's shaking his head. Hey, his talkback mic doesn't work. He keeps pushing the fucking button.
Imagine that.
You broke it. What'd you do? Set your fat ass on it? The door's locked, so I don't have to worry about that. Rob, you know what? As you and many listeners, brother, are aware, in the latter part of 2023, we saw a spirited debate regarding the recent revelations of one Paul Landis, a former United States Secret Service agent, Jackie Kennedy's personal agent, and one of the agents on
the great debate.
The great debate of 2023, Paul Landis. Now, to recap, to wit, Mr. Landis has now, of course, come forward to claim that 60 years later, that after the motorcade arrived at Dallas Parkland Hospital with the fatally wounded president, that he, Landis, found and retrieved an intact rifle bullet from the back seat of the limousine and laid it on Kennedy's stretcher by his feet. And Mr. Landis claims that CE-399, the bullet known as the magic bullet, is the intact bullet that he found. Now, it was big news in our world, of course, Rob.
Absolutely. Because if, of course, everybody, he hadn't said anything in 60 years. Now, all of a sudden, here we go. Yeah. He's just trying to make money, blah, 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 blah.
I still don't know what to make of it.
It's either that or if it's true, it changes everything.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that 100%. But also,
it's a very polarizing subject in the community for sure.
But I also know that there's no damn way that that bullet caused those wounds, and I know that Oswald wasn't firing no damn rifle. So
yeah. So what makes sense? That he did find the bullet on the back of the limo seat? I mean, it makes sense to me. That bullet definitely didn't create 7 wounds in 2 people.
No. That bullet caused 0 wounds in 0 people in reality. Right. That's the reality of the damn situation.
So
right?
I tend to lend a little credence to what Mr. Landis says, but
hey, man,
that's just me.
I sure want to believe him, but I do. Well, look at this, man. Check this out. 2 weeks ago, Rob, I got a message over at the Dallas Action from a listener with an interesting document link. First, I want to thank the listener, Mr. Ken Rossi, for this link. Real quick, here's Mr. Ken's message. I'll read it to you, Rob. Hello, Doug. Please see the following link. Saw this posted in an online forum. See the last paragraph, dated the day of the assassination. Does this possibly back up Paul Landis' story? Thanks for all you do, Ken. Okay, now Ken didn't say which forum or that he found it on, Rob, or by who. So if you're listening and you posted this for Ken to see and share with us, thanks and sorry. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, the link provided by Mr. Ken is a Mary Farrell Foundation archive link that takes us to, Rob, page 143 of a 240 page file labeled FBI-62-109-060 JFK Headquarters File, Section 16. That's what document this is. So now the sentence that got Mr. Ken's attention, my good man, is in the last paragraph of page 1 of this 2-page document because A, proper context, and B, because this ain't Kennedy's and King, we're going to give you the whole document, okay? FBI document it is. It says subject, assassination of President Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. I'm going to read this now, Rob. Stop me if you wish to interject. Special agent in charge Shanklin, Dallas office, was telephonically advised that an immediate check should be made to determine whether or not the bullet or bullets had been removed from Governor Connolly in order that same could be obtained for necessary examination and evidentiary purposes. He was advised that appropriate arrangements had been made for the same check and obtaining of bullets from the president's body after arriving in Washington if they had not been previously removed in Texas. Shanklin advised that there was some question as to whether or not the bullets had actually lodged in either body. And there was a rumor in Dallas that some Secret Service agent had allegedly picked up one of the bullets in question. Shanklin was advised that in the event the bullets had gone through the body of the president and or Governor Connolly, every effort must be expended to try and locate these bullets for evidentiary purposes. Shanklin was also advised that an immediate check would be made with Secret Service in Washington in an effort to ascertain whether any agent or Secret Service had picked up one of the bullets, and he, Shanklin, would be advised. Okay, here's the paragraph to which Mr. Rossi wished sorry, Rob, I got redneck mouth again. Okay, here's the paragraph to which Mr. Rossi wished to direct our attention. How'd you like that, Rob? Was that pretty good?
I like that.
All
yeah,
right.
it was good.
Shanklin subsequently advised information had been received that a Secret Service agent had searched the car in which the president was riding and had found the bullet which allegedly killed the president. Shanklin also advised that the rifle which allegedly had been used to assassinate the president was now in the possession of a Mr. Sorrells, who is in charge of Secret Service in Dallas, who was extremely cooperative but was holding the rifle on instructions and would do so until he was authorized by headquarters to release same. Now, I'm going to stop right there a minute. Because that didn't jump out at me the first time I read this document. And I know it's not necessarily related to Landis, but I thought DPD had that rifle the whole time. The Carcano, I mean.
Yeah, I never knew the Secret Service had.
Forrest Sorrells, who is in charge of the Secret Service in Dallas, who was extremely cooperative but was holding the rifle on instructions and would do so until he was authorized by headquarters to release same.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
When the hell did Forrest Sorrells ever have the Carcano?
I don't know. It sounds like he took it from the Dallas police and was holding on to it until his superiors told him to release it. But from what I always understood, the DPD had it and then sent it to Washington.
They carried it out of the fucking building.
Well, yeah.
Unless...
And they're parading it around the Dallas police headquarters,
Holding
you
it
see
up.
Lieutenant Day hold over his head and all that.
Holding it up, dude. That's what I saw in my mind's eye as I finished that sentence. Was like, hold up. And I saw Day holding the thing up. Right?
And you would think that they would immediately process that thing, to try to find fingerprints or evidence to match the bullet to the gun, this, that, and the other. That you figure that the Dallas police would be the place to do this because they had the equipment to do this. The Secret Service might have had a field office in Dallas, but they didn't have a quote unquote lab, to process evidence like that in. That makes no sense whatsoever.
This report that Forrest Sorrells had the rifle.
Unless they had a different rifle.
That's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
We don't know. It was November 22nd, 1963. There's no time stamp on this document, right?
Right.
We don't know what time of day it was. There's a lot of confusion that day, right? We've said from the jump, you and I have we've been podcasting for 10 years, talking about that damn Johnson 30-06 rifle, right? That disappeared in Dallas before the assassination, right? And we've said for years that just the fact that the FBI was in Los Angeles at 10:30 a.m. the next morning, bracing those two PIs, Richard Hathcock and Roy Payne, on this Johnson 30-06 rifle, they asked him three questions. Where were you yesterday? Were you in Dallas yesterday? Do you know Lauren Hall? And why were your fingerprints on a certain Johnson 30-06 rifle? And unless that, we've always said, unless that rifle was found in Dallas.
In Dealey Plaza.
How the hell, why would they even have, unless they found that rifle, why would they have any reason to ask Roy Payne if he was in Dallas?
True.
Now,
And you know what else, Doug? When people were talking about immediately after the assassination and running up the grassy knoll, this and that, they were running into someone identifying themselves as a Secret Service agent.
right.
Right?
Right. We've got the rifle. Well, but then, according to this report, I don't think whoever was on the hill would have told him we've got the rifle. According to this, they're talking to Sorrells, and he's going, I've got the rifle, but I can't give it to you yet.
Right, but I'm saying
That's fucked up.
If there was a Secret Service agent stationed on the ground in Dealey Plaza, whether it be on the overpass or somewhere around the 6th floor depository or around the monuments there on the grassy knoll, and the shots ring out and he's like, oh shit, they're coming from over there, and he immediately goes over there and happens upon this rifle, and he's like, okay, what should I do with this thing?
You're saying theoretically, not Roy Hargraves with a fake ID, but a real Secret Service agent, and he finds
correct
a rifle
and gives it to Sorrells,
or somebody finds a 30-06 on a building rooftop and gives and makes contact with the Secret Service.
Yeah, I mean, the Secret Service could have had somebody on a rooftop in the area
that saw it
and went up there and got the rifle and gave it to Sorrells. Anything's possible. And when you combine the fact that, we're talking about the Landis revelation here,
listen
JFK had a shallow wound in his back. Okay, that it's more than likely. Because I think one of the autopsy doctors said they could only stick their pinky in like up to the first knuckle. Like there was no hole going all the way through his body. The trajectory of the bullet from the 6th floor doesn't match, if it hit him in the back to come out his throat. So, all this stuff lines up. It makes more sense that this bullet hit JFK in the back. It went in a little bit. And then as he's jostling around in the back seat, because Jackie puts her arm around him. Maybe she knocked it loose and it fell on the little ledge there behind the rear seat.
Now I can see that. That makes sense
to me. It all kind of makes sense,
That 100% makes sense to me. Yeah.
Now, when you read the first part of that, what came to mind was, when it says the Secret Service agent searched the car and found the bullet that killed President Kennedy. I don't think they're talking about CE 399. I think they're talking about they've probably found a bullet fragment that took his head off. That's the one that killed President Kennedy. It couldn't have been CE 399. Even if it did go through his throat, that wouldn't have killed him. Or it might have, but it likely wouldn't have. And it would have been found if it went through Kennedy and into Connolly or through Connolly, it definitely wouldn't have been found on the back of the rear seat ledge. So
yeah,
it makes me think that they're talking about a bullet fragment, about the Secret Service finding this fragment, and it couldn't be. It might not be referring to Landis. But the first part of what you read sounds like it's referring to Landis. But the second part doesn't, when they're talking about the shot that killed Kennedy and they found that bullet. But very interesting.
You're right, man. That first part, it does sound exactly like what Landis is relating in 2023 and 2024. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I was kind of blown away by that sentence about the Secret Service having the rifle. I didn't read you the last sentence. What do you hear this? But I'm going to back up and read both sentences together because I want you to hear this together, okay?
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about this. Shanklin also advised that the rifle which allegedly has been used to assassinate the president was now in the possession of a Mr. Sorrells, who is in charge of Secret Service in Dallas, who was extremely cooperative but was holding the rifle on instructions and would do so until he was authorized by headquarters to release same. You ready?
Yeah.
Arrangements are being made for this to be taken up with Secret Service here in Washington and to determine if they do not desire the Bureau to handle the ballistics examination.
Wow.
Arrangements are being made to get the murder weapon from Secret Service, says the FBI on November 22nd, 1963. That's a little fucked up.
Yeah.
Right? Now, go back to what we were saying a while ago. Theoretically, say the Secret Service, that they think they've got it, right? It's the 30-06. We know that by 10:30 the next morning, the FBI had done to the 30-06 exactly what this document says they're going to do with the rifle they get from the Secret Service, which is fingerprint it. Because at 10:30 the next morning, they're in Los Angeles. Hey, Mr. Payne, why are your fingerprints on a Johnson 30-06 rifle, this particular rifle? Oh, and by the way, were you in Dallas yesterday? Now, the only reason to group those fucking questions together is if you found this rifle in Dallas.
Exactly.
And now we have this, like you just said.
I love all these little pieces of the puzzle that come together, man. Golly.
Dude, I had no idea this was going to happen today because I was concentrating on the Paul Landis aspect of the document that Ken sent me, Ken Rossi, and
right.
I completely missed this when I was prepping this episode. Completely fucking missed it.
Wow.
Kind of blowing my mind a little. That's fucking crazy, dude. It's crazy.
Wow. I mean, you can only infer. I mean, I had never heard that before, that the Secret Service had possession of the rifle, or what they thought was the rifle.
Or that the Secret Service ever had possession of a rifle.
And it disappeared when it didn't have any fingerprints from Lee Harvey Oswald on that sumbitch.
And
and
then 23 hours after the shooting, we have them. Mr. Payne, we need to ask you about Lauren Hall and Jerry Patrick Hemming and a rifle in Dallas that we found your fingerprints on. And Payne's got to go, hey, back to... Dude, what the fuck? I fired it over the summer, and then Hathcock had to go, look, y'all chill out. Jerry Hemming pawned this to us in January, and his buddy Lauren Hall came back through a couple months ago and took it out of pawn, and he left with it. Where was he heading? Well, he had a trailer full of guns and ammo, and he was heading to Dallas, Texas, and he had a cat named Lawrence Howard with him.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't until Saturday that they did the paraffin. Was it the paraffin test? And they had sent the rifle to the FBI, and then it came back, and they retested the rifle, and then found Oswald's palm print under the barrel, in between the stock.
Yeah.
And the FBI had tied it to being bought through the mail from Klein's to Alec Heidel, which was Oswald's alias. And then the other rifle, talk of that, just goes away.
That's right. I mean? That's exactly what happened. An FBI agent in Los Angeles named Jerome Crow pretty much went over there and put Roy Payne under the hot lamps for a few minutes, right? Braced his ass. Were you in Dallas? No. Why are your fingerprints on this rifle? I fired it back in the summer. Do you know Lauren Hall? How well do you know Lauren Hall? And then the end of the report says, but this rifle is not identical with the Mannlicher Carcanos, so no further action is necessary. The fucking end. And it went away. And we still don't know for sure where that rifle ended up. We don't know what the hell happened to it. Have no idea.
We know what Hemming says, and we know what Hall says about it, but I'm pretty sure didn't Hemming say he never got it back, but Hall said he gave it to some dentist.
A dentist, yeah,
to give to him.
Yep. And then I don't even know. You know, Philippe Hemming, bro, reach out to us. What's the story from your dad as far as what happened to that rifle? Just, hey, it exists and it ended up with this guy or whatever, man. We'd really like to know. I don't guess I know what the current, I don't know what that answer would be. But yeah, Mr. Philippe, reach out to us, man. Let us know.
And all the mysterious drops from Lauren Hall over the years about that damn rifle.
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the fact that in the late 60s, he gave his stepson a Mannlicher Carcano rifle and said, hide this, put this away. Why? One of these days you'll get it.
Right.
Which he still got the rifle, made in the same armory as the one I almost said Lee Harvey Oswald's. Almost fucked up. Don't let me do that, Rob.
Yeah. Alec Heidel's.
Yeah. With the rifle that they accused poor Lee Harvey Oswald of using to murder Kennedy, which he didn't fucking do. He didn't do it. Right, Rob?
That's right.
All right. It's break time, anybody?
Yes, sir.
It's break time. Guys, listen to these awesome words from, I think, 3 or 4 different sponsors and supporters this month, Rob, starting with the world's best fucking hot sauce. We'll be right back.
Silk City, baby.
Big Bad Bob here with you for Silk City hot sauces. Why Silk City? Because this hot sauce comes to you directly from Patterson, New Jersey, also known as Silk City. These hot sauces are 100% natural, gluten-free, vegan, contain no chemicals, fillers, dyes, or junk. Everything is packed into recyclable glass containers because glass doesn't leach weird flavors into the product. All other hot sauces are sourced in small batches from locally bought fresh peppers. It's all about the pepper, people. I'm telling you. Your boy, Big Bad Bob, loves his food like he loves his women. Hot and spicy, but not so hot you can't eat them. So, if you love yourself some sauce and you're tired of trying to transform your bland meat into something edible, with the tip of a jar, you will transform your life forever. Head over to silkcityhotsauce.com, place an order, and upon checkout, enter the code GUNMAN, that's GUNMAN, for 20% off of your entire order. You won't regret it. Thank me later. Peace.
The next time you visit lovely Austria, stay at Farker's Head Roadside Motel. Ask for our presidential suite, where redneck podcasters stay rent-free.
Hey guys, Doug here to let you know that an all-new issue of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, has dropped. That's right, from MidnightRiderNews.com. That's Rider with a W, guys. WRITER comes issue number 015. As usual, it's jam-packed with information, and this time jam-packed with articles that commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. Some of the contributing authors and subjects covered include S.T. Patrick, looking at the current state of JFK research, its community, its hierarchy, and the obsession with defending planted flags. Stan Weber takes a look at the city of Denton, Texas, and its connections to 11/22/63. Gavin McMahon reassesses the murder of Officer J.D. Tippit. We got Ed Tatro looking at Jerry Hemming, Madam New, and Gordon McClendon. Walt Brown, our friend Dr. Walt Brown, assessing historically what the murder of JFK means today. Randolph Benson looking at JFK's peace speech at American University in the context of what it meant to the late researcher John Judge, and much, much, much more. That's issue number 015 of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, from MidnightWriterNews.com. That's MidnightWriterNews.com. Order now. Go on. 1. And we're back. Quick hits number 51, JFK Assassination Research News and Notes with Rob Clark and Doug Campbell. I am Doug. Rob is going to lead off this second half. Look, Rob, here, I enabled the cat. I was telling you about my notes earlier.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
I can make complete sense of that.
Here's my notes.
There's not even, he didn't even hold up a blank page, guys. There's just no page.
My notes are about as redacted as that last document I read.
I wish I could be as good off the cuff as you are off the cuff, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know if just, life experience just trained me to be a preparation, be OCD about it or what. But, man, I envy that about you, man. You just fucking...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man. Anyway. So, enough stroking of Bob.
Well, your analysis is top notch. I mean, there's a lot that I leave out from going off the cuff. So, there's pros and cons to both ways to go about it. But we're two different people with two different strategies and two different ways of going about things, and that's why the show works the way it does.
When we mix ideas and research and resources, magic happens, no doubt.
That's right. That's right. All right. So next up, Doug, I've got to follow up on the first article that I had, or the first paper that I had, and just to give the audience an idea of what a freaking clown show that the CIA proper is. And to have anybody think that they could pull off the assassination of a U.S. president in broad daylight in one of America's major cities and not have it fall back on into their laps is a joke.
You know that there were a couple, when Castro passed away, there were a couple of memes about exactly what you're talking about the fact that they're only like, people say 260 some odd plots on his life. I think that is way higher. I think the actual number's way higher. But nothing succeeded. And my favorite meme about the whole thing, about their acumen in this department that you're talking about, was by The Onion. And they showed the funeral procession, and the gist of the story was the CIA tried to drop a piano on the hearse, but it missed.
Yeah, I mean, this analogy is pretty much right. So here are, Doug, 11 of the strangest plots hatched by the CIA in history.
I love it, man. I love it. This is awesome.
Number 1, the CIA tried to use psychedelic drugs to control people's minds. Of course, everybody's familiar with MK Ultra, right?
Yeah.
So, if you enjoy the poetry of Allen Ginsberg, the lyrics of the Grateful Dead, or the play or film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you might want to thank the CIA.
Thank Sidney Gottlieb. Sidney Gottlieb. He's responsible for, Easy Rider.
Yeah.
That Monkeys movie Head. Popular music as we knew it from 1966 to 1975. Wow.
Yeah, so Ginsberg, the Dead's lyricist Robert Hunter, and Cuckoo's author Ken Kesey all first received LSD thanks to a secret CIA program run by the chemist Sidney Gottlieb called MK Ultra. In the early 1950s, Gottlieb helped convince the agency to spend $250,000 on LSD in order to see if the drug, along with other substances like heroin, could be used to control the mind of users. According to the author Stephen Kinzer, who wrote a book on the subject, the drugs were distributed to prisons, hospitals, and clinics, often under the guise of fake foundations to research the effects. Some subjects dabbled in the drugs voluntarily, while others, including members of the military and our government, were injected without their knowledge. In the end, mind control remained elusive, but American literature, music, and theater were never the same again. So, from personal experience, I'd like to thank the CIA for creating LSD. There's Dead shows and Pink Floyd shows and raves back in the 80s and 90s were phenomenal.
Now, back in those days, that wasn't so much my thing. See, I needed energy.
Oh, it gave you energy.
Oh, really?
Untapped, relentless energy, bro. Oh yeah, man. Except when you were coming down. That was the only part about LSD that sucked. Unless you had something to speed you back up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But
there's a comedian named Theo Vaughn, and this is I always think when I think back in my early days, this quote always comes to mind. This guy asked him, he said, back in the days when you were partying, what was your favorite kind of marijuana? And he goes, my favorite kind of marijuana was cocaine.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Not that anybody here endorses or encourages any kind of behavior such as that. But we were all young at one time, right?
Yeah. And, you can kind of tie the CIA into all that, thanks to the crack epidemic and them bringing drugs into the country to sell to fund their black operations.
Hey, when we were young, Rob was inside tripping. I was outside painting his fence. That's how that worked.
Number 2, the CIA tried to train people, Doug, to harness their psychic abilities. Here's a fun word, psychoenergetics. It was the word the CIA used to describe some far-out ideas like remote viewing. The theory that a person could see what was happening in remote locations through their own mind. Project Stargate, which began with the CIA and was later transferred to the DIA, was an attempt to harness this ability, along with other mental powers like telekinesis, for intelligence gathering purposes. They say it didn't work. Those in the program say it did work. So, while no definitive cost for the program has ever been revealed, some reports claim the price tag of all the tests and research coming in at around $20 million over the course of 20 years. This program was documented in a book by Ian Ronson, later adapted to the George Clooney film in 2009, The Men Who Stare at Goats.
That's a great movie, by the way.
It is.
Fantastic movie, dude.
Number 3. This relates to the Kennedy assassination. The CIA wanted to make Fidel Castro's beard fall out. There was no shortage of assassination plots against Fidel Castro during his lifetime, but one of the strangest plans the CIA ever hatched was simply meant to embarrass the man by using thallium salts in order to make his beard fall out. Thallium is a toxic chemical element that can cause symptoms as far-ranging as abdominal pain and headaches to seizures, hair loss, and eventually death when a person is exposed to it. Their goal was to sprinkle thallium in Castro's shoes during an overseas trip where it would be absorbed through his skin, causing him to lose his beard and robbing him of his machismo, taking his communist regime down in the process, apparently.
Not his machismo.
Yeah.
Vicious bastards.
Caused his pubic hair to fall out.
Ooh.
He is smooth as a baby's bottom down there.
Man, like Jada Pinkett Smith.
Keep my dictator's name out your mouth. The plot allegedly fell through when Castro last minute canceled the trip. So, his beard remained intact, folks. Number 4.
Unlike Jada Pinkett Smith's.
Right. Number 4 is actually the plot of a movie coming out soon, entitled Argyle. Number 4, the CIA wanted to use kitty cats as spies. Dubbed Operation Acoustic Pussy. Dubbed Operation Acoustic Kitty. This project involves surgically implanting microphones inside of a cat's anus.
Did you say acoustic pussy?
Yes.
So like an echo.
Right. Hello. Who could then secretly record audio conversations. To pull this off, transmitters and microphones were placed inside of a cat's skull and ear canal, respectively. Thanks to an hour-long operation, in a perfect world, the cats would then be able to rub against the legs of America's enemies and pick up valuable intel along the way. The entire project was abandoned in 1967 after a mic'd-up feline bolted out of a reconnaissance van and was reportedly run over by a taxi during its first field test.
Oh, no.
Poor kitty.
Oh, that's awful.
Poor Kiki.
That's so awful and kind of funny, but it's so awful.
Jesus.
Oh, I'm going
Number 5.
I'm going
the CIA. The CIA wanted to make Osama bin Laden action figures, Doug. In 2005, Donald Levine, who helped launch the blockbuster G.I. Joe line for Hasbro in 1964, was asked by the CIA to help develop an action figure of Osama bin Laden that would terrify young children and forever deter them from being amenable to his message. According to the Washington Post's Adam Goldman, the face of the action figure was painted with a heat-dissolving material designed to peel off and reveal a red-faced, bloody bin Laden who looked like a demon with piercing green eyes and black facial markings.
What?
The idea was rejected after the prototype stage, but one early model resurfaced at an auction in 2014.
There was nothing about that I liked.
Wow.
Number 6. Oh, this is right up our alley, bud. The CIA used inflatable sex dolls to fool the KGB. The idea here was that an agent in the passenger seat of a vehicle under surveillance could round a corner, jump out, and have an inflatable rubber sex doll immediately replace him, fooling his tail, if only briefly, and allowing him to escape undetected. To complete the charade, the dolls were stored inside unremarkable containers. One was housed in a fake birthday cake and would be rigged to unfurl and blow up when needed, aptly called the Jack-in-the-Box.
How much are these people making a year is what I want to know.
The dolls were modeled to look
how
passively
much are they
human.
paying these fucking morons?
I know.
Jesus Christ.
The dolls were modeled to look passively human and were actually used successfully in the 1980s.
I stand corrected.
Jesus. Number 7. Howard Hughes, a reclusive billionaire, helped the CIA recover a Soviet nuclear submarine. So this one actually sort of worked and has a fun bit of trivia behind it. In 1968, a Soviet submarine armed with nuclear warheads suffered a mechanical failure and disappeared in the Pacific. The U.S. wanted to know exactly what the Soviets had lost, but how do you recover a 2,000-ton sub that's more than 16,000 feet underwater?
They were not successful with this, were they? Or were
they?
They were?
Well, kinda.
Kinda.
Halfway. We'll get there. The CIA toyed with ideas like rockets and balloons to bring it up, though those were quickly dismissed, and then came Howard Hughes, the eccentric and reclusive film, aviation, and engineering pioneer. Hughes agreed to help by pretending to send a vessel to search for manganese nodules as a cover story. In reality, Hughes' company used a 620-foot ship called the Hughes Glomar Explorer to recover the sub in the spring of 1974, though they could only retrieve half of it, Doug. See, I told you they were half right. But here comes the fun part. Rolling Stone journalist Harriet Ann Philippi sought a FOIA request about the recovery efforts in '76, to which the CIA responded with this now famous phrase: "We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the operation."
Wow,
Today,
so
the phrase
that's the
is
origin
known as
of that. Wow.
Today, the phrase is known as the quote Glomar response. So yeah,
I was unaware
that's where
of
that came from.
Wow.
Yeah. Number 8, the CIA
You know
pretended
what?
to make us.
I use that phrase at least 3 times a week. No shit.
Right.
No shit.
Well, now you know where it came from.
Yeah, good to know.
And like G.I. Joe says, knowing is half the battle.
Absolutely. It's like that thing people say about imitation and, flattery.
Yes.
I won't get ahead of you, don't worry.
Number 8. The CIA pretended to make a sci-fi film in Iran to help rescue hostages. You'll recognize this plot from 2013's movie Argo.
Yeah, I saw this movie. It was a great
won
movie.
it was.
Ben Affleck was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won an Academy Award for Best Picture for dramatizing the efforts of the CIA to help 6 U.S. Embassy staff members escape a revolutionary Iran. The agents did this by pretending to be part of a production for a science fiction film called Lord of Light, which CIA agent Tony Mendez later renamed Argo. The movie was fake, but the agency used a real script and concept art illustrated by comic legend Jack Kirby from a film being pitched in Hollywood in order to make the operation seem more authentic. As unbelievable as it sounds, the plan worked, though the movie took its fair share of liberties. Number 9. The CIA wanted to use pigeons to take reconnaissance photos in the 70s.
Well, I've heard about this, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
This operation involves strapping a $2,000 camera onto a pigeon and sending them over high-value Soviet targets to take photos that were allegedly better than what a spy plane could capture. The BBC suggests that this 70s mission, named Takana, might have actually been a success, though many documents relating to it are not yet declassified. It does, however, sound suspect. Everyone knows using birds is a sure way to foul up any operation.
Man, I'm seeing a Family Guy bit in my head. Like, guy straps a $2,000 camera to a pigeon. He releases it. A hawk swoops down, grabs the pigeon, and he goes, "God damn it!" You know, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Or just flies in the other direction and never seen again.
Never seen again.
Number 10, the CIA wanted to demoralize Soviet troops by airdropping extra-large American condoms labeled medium.
That's what I call a psyop.
Right. How else are you going to broadcast your country's anatomical superiority? This one never made it past the initial likely giggle-filled planning stages, but that's probably for the best.
As ridiculous as that is, that doesn't surprise me, you know?
Right. And number 11, finally, the CIA actually made a porno movie, Doug. Did you know that?
No. I wonder if they got DJ Yella from NWA to direct it.
I don't know.
That's what he did after NWA. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Like he said.
I doubt it. I think this happened before when DJ Yella was still a kid, probably.
Man, dude, he was making $20,000 a week. No.
Oh, yeah.
No, 3 to 5 movies a week at $20,000 per movie is what it was.
And probably getting a lot of sex in the process. There's no downside to that scenario whatsoever.
Spoken like my buddy Rob.
Yes. So they made a porno movie, Doug, using tales of sexual debauchery to discredit political leaders is a tradition that goes back at least to the Roman Empire.
So they made a movie they made porno movies using tales.
Anyone who says history is boring has obviously never read Suetonius. Little wonder then that the CIA tried a similar tactic during the height of the Cold War by actually commissioning a porno film to be made in the 1950s starring a body double wearing a lifelike mask of Indonesian President Sukarno, whose anti-Western sentiment and pro-communist leanings were beginning to agitate higher-ups in the U.S. intelligence sectors.
See, the bad part is I'm guessing this dude didn't look like The Rock.
Right. Didn't look like his cock either. According to some sources, the whole thing was actually filmed in Hollywood, and images from the production were circulated throughout political groups in Indonesia. Apparently, nobody actually gave a shit, so the CIA had bankrolled all this smut for nothing. So, yeah, I came across this list on mental flaws.
They're really good at coming up with spending a lot of money on a lot of nothing. Man,
right?
You know. And if you didn't know, if you had any question, just see the list that Mr. Rob just read you.
There, folks, is your mastermind of the Kennedy assassination.
Exactly.
The CIA.
And they did it all for a man who had been out of government for 18 months.
Yes.
Yeah, had been put out to pasture. They put all this genius to work for someone who had absolutely no fucking pull whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
Totally believable.
Totally believable.
Yeah, I saw that list and I said, man, we got to do that.
So many of the planted flags that people in this community defend hinges on these people being operational geniuses.
Yeah. Speaking of planted flags, Doug.
Planted flags. Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time, isn't it? I guess. We have a guest on this show. Today, we are pleased to debut what we hope will become a semi-regular segment here on the show. Right, Rob?
That's right, Doug.
Our friend.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very cool. This is features our friend, guys, St. Patrick. Rob, he is the host of the very fine Midnight Rider News Show. He is the owner and proprietor and editor and publisher of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, a periodical that we both are very fond of.
He even puts it in an envelope and licks it himself, folks.
And sends it to you.
He does it all.
Does it all. You heard just a few minutes ago, you heard an ad for the most recent issue of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics. And in the most recent issue, ST published an opinion piece written by himself that we asked him to share here. My initial idea was to just read it or read parts of it and have, and bounce it off you, Rob, and get you to comment, and we would comment on it. But then I decided to ask ST, since he is, as we are, a podcast host, to record it as a segment. And we had a lot of fun with it, and it might be controversial, and there may be parts of it that hurt your feelings. And I'm going to be honest with you. There were parts of this, what you're about to hear, it was like looking in a mirror for me, and I went, ooh, I do that. And it's something we think you need to hear. So this is, again, debuting what we hope will become a semi-regular segment on the show with ST. Ladies and gentlemen, Quick Hits presents Midnight Rider Views with ST Patrick.
As I write this, the 5th episode of the Rob Reiner and Soledad O'Brien Who Killed JFK podcast has just released. Because History Channel PTSD has cautioned me to wait until the final moments of the final episode to pass judgment, I am not yet sure what I think of it. Yet the forces of JFK assassination community criticism have already begun. And why wouldn't they have? It's the hallmark of the community, and there are planted flags to protect. The general public is casually interested in the Kennedy assassination even 60 years after the gruesome murder of the president in Dallas. I'm still surprised how many people ask me, where should I begin? Now, my stock answer has always been Jim Marr's Crossfire or Walt Brown's Treachery in Dallas. These are masterwork surveys that are completely accessible for the newly interested. I, however, am starting to wonder if my general advisory answer should change. As a member of both the Education Forum and an unnamed email list that has in recent months seen over 400 messages of incessant bickering with no one's mind being changed, the realities of the JFK-A community have bulldozed my views of the 60th anniversary, the purpose of this community, and my tolerance of the case in general. The Education Forum could be an intellectually catty and a bit self-absorbed as members write long messages, quote, proving, unquote, their points to other members who are never going to believe they have proven anything. It's a cyclical, long-winded standstill. That said, a search done on the forum can wield some amazing information because there probably isn't a piece of evidence or testimony that hasn't been discussed there at least once. The arguments on the email list are initiated and engaged in by some of the most recognizable names in the field. You would know them, both the lone nutters and the conspiracy theorists, both whom would hate those names. Thousands of words have been expended, and they've all driven themselves into permanent carpal tunnel, trying to convince one another about what expert is correct or what witness is believable. The typical lone nutter versus conspiracy theorist debate on the forum and the email list goes something like this. The conspiracy theorist writes, "This statement by government official X, Dr. Y, or witness Z is absolute proof that A, B, and C happened." The lone nutter responds, "Well, that witness is completely inconsistent. He said this the day after the murder, and then he said something completely contradictory 10 years later." The conspiracy theorist responds, "He was scared right after the murder. The government made him say what he said and then changed his statement." The lone nutter then responds, "Yet you think his statement later was fully and completely honest?" The conspiracy theorist writes, "Are you impugning the reputation of the researcher who conducted the interview?" The lone nutter responds, "Yes, that researcher believes people that aren't believable." The conspiracy theorist finally responds, "Yeah, well, you believe so-and-so lone nutter researcher, so you're not credible. Your researcher was probably paid by the CIA anyway." That's it, folks. That's the path, give or take some details, of 90% of what you will find on the forums and in the communities. That would be expected if it was always conspiracy theorist versus lone nutter. But it isn't. The same types of arguments are had between those who favor conspiracy because, again, planted flags must be protected at all costs and with all energy committed. There's one thing that I like quite a bit, actually, about the Reiner podcast so far. It's done for the average consumer, not the expert. And yes, the experts have decried that too. I've long criticized those atop the self-appointed JFK hierarchy who seemingly only write these days to impress others they deem parallel to them or above them on the totem pole. I've actually heard these researchers say things akin to, "Read my book. I'm not going to spend time answering these basic questions." I really think they forget that at one time, everyone in these communities were asking basic questions, coming to problematic conclusions until they had questions answered for them in some manner. That process, oddly enough, is called learning. New researchers often think that William Greer, the driver, is responsible for the assassination. Now, that lasts about 10 seconds in their journey. But why get mad at them and berate them? It's a part of their journey. High school kids look to the mob because the stories are wild and the characters are brash. This is before they know more, sure. But why dismiss them or chastise them for being, quote, so wrong, quote? This is a part of their process, is it not? Those who have spent decades in this know that nuance underlies every part of the case. There is no "it was blank" answer. That smoking gun does not exist, has never existed, and will never exist. Even if there was a real smoking gun, an easy answer, a legitimate one-page document that had the names and locations of the shooters, that had the financiers, that had the timeline of the planning, 80% of this community would scream, "It's a limited hangout," when the document inevitably doesn't endorse their pet theory, their pet shooters, or their pet organizers. There are, after all, planted flags to protect. Rather than spending time with the newly interested, talking and teaching them, the JFK-A hierarchy's answer is to throw at them a list of 5 to 10 books they need to read to straighten themselves out. The problem is, they aren't going to do it. Your attitude has already discouraged them. Why would they buy 10 books, 1 to 3 of which are self-servingly your own books? While I made a lot of new friends in this community and interviewed some wonderful minds, it quickly hit me that the personality of the community's self-appointed movers and shakers as a whole was not mine. At the bottom, this community could not be nicer. They are fantastic and they care about the case. At the top, it can be a pit of insecure gatekeeping vipers. I've witnessed some of my favorite researchers in this field, very nice men, getting attacked by the self-appointed gatekeeping hierarchy, and I've seen them in print attacked with the ferocity that should have been saved for the news networks, the History Channel, the big publishers, and textbook companies such as McGraw-Hill. The behavior by some at the top is atrocious. It's also why this community will largely be dead in 25 years. Believe that. The hierarchy has spent decades trying to write books for one another's acknowledgement. They're so full of minutia that a newcomer could never begin to understand them. When you meet many of them at a conference, make sure to duck so they can look past you, trying to find someone more important to talk to. They do work upward. They write for those who they believe are their peers at the top or those who are perceived as being above them. They don't write for you and I, but be guaranteed you'll hear their shock and awe when you ask them a question. They answer to genuinely interested newcomers. You haven't read my book? I'm not answering that now. Read my book. I'm not just going to give it away when it's in the book. While it's impressive that Jim Marrs remains the best survey still today, it's also sort of sad that someone hasn't done a large one-volume survey since Crossfire. This shows you how much they care about passing on the traditions and zeal for this case. Putting this into perspective, hierarchical author X is a big deal when they walk into a room at a JFK conference, yet the hotel staff has never heard of them, will never hear of them, and couldn't care less who they are. Big fish, small pond, microscopic influence, absolutely mortal. Yet this hasn't stopped the fanboys and fangirls from slurping these people live and throughout social media. Reading Pat Spears' thoughts on the passing of David Lifton in Garrison issue 12 was a horrifying experience and should be a true-to-life warning of what can happen when your academic hobby becomes your personal obsession. This has happened to too many good people, and they will never realize it. There's a real thing in this community called a JFK divorce. Some of the best people in our field have experienced the loss of a spouse and a family as a result of their obsession. It's not uncommon for fellow members of the community to think of the ex-wife as someone who just didn't understand, rather than as the rational spouse who could balance aspects of life in a healthy manner. Obsession should not be a gold star. To be obsessed about these cases means that you care more about them than almost every member of either John or Robert Kennedy's own family cares about them. Remember that and take that to heart. It's a hobby for me. It's been 30 plus years. I'm already in. But I'm someone with many hobbies. I have books, I've watched documentaries, and I've been to conferences. But I also believe the case was resolved before 1970. It wasn't Oswald, a lone nut acting alone. I'm going to spend more time playing Stratomatic baseball than I am trying to convince a lone nutter that Witness 37 and Witness 72 are credible. I care not to accumulate files about where George Joannides shop for groceries, what movies James Jesus Angleton liked to watch, or how many houses away from J. Edgar Hoover lived David Atlee Phillips. I don't need June Cobb's blouse size, and I don't care if Fred Chrisman ever lived in the same city as Joseph Miltier. Oswald didn't do it. Of that I am confident, and if Oswald didn't do it, someone else did. But it wasn't Oswald. The rest is detailed hobbyism bordering on a potentially destructive obsession. You don't believe me? Part of this angers you? Who is he to say this, you'll say? He's not even in the beloved hierarchy. Well, ask yourself, where does this end? What would realistically satisfy you? If there are no real answers, this is a hobby bordering on obsession, and it won't be a happy one. You'll spend decades bickering with people whose minds you'll never change and whose views will never change yours. Why would you want to do this? If peace doesn't begin with you, it cannot exist. The JFK assassination story is a moment of history, is a sad, tragic one. The tentacles of a deep state concentration of power brokers, combined with the elements of the seediest underworld of crime, politics, and national intelligence, murdered the President of the United States in broad daylight in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963. It was blamed on Lee Harvey Oswald, who was no hero himself, by the way. The mainstream media has spent decades protecting the institutions that fund and feed their careers. Those are the realities. But if a young person now comes up to me and asks where they should begin with their interest in this case, my answer may simply be one word. Don't. I'm S.T. Patrick for the Midnight Writer News Show and Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics.
Wow. You know, Doug?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rob.
I had not read this, and you were nice enough to send it to me. And I didn't listen to it before the show purposefully because I wanted to hear it and give you my raw reactions to first hearing this.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, because what I did was I waited until now to take my notes on it. I did listen to it when I ran it through the system there, remixing it, but I waited to take my notes on my observations. But, dude, yours are the freshest, so I'm going to cede the floor to you 100%, man.
Okay, so first impressions on hearing this. I know exactly where ST is coming from because I reached the same revelation many years ago. You know, when the age of the internet and Facebook and all this stuff came into play. And I remember, I mean, that's where I met you, Doug, was in a Facebook group.
Exactly
talking
right.
about this very subject.
Exactly right.
And I used to argue with people. I used to waste time trying to convince people of something or bust a stupid theory. I mean, that was the whole inception of the original blog that I did before I started the podcast. Because I got so tired of seeing people like Jim Fetzer and Ralph Sinkay, propagate their horse shit on the research community. And people were lapping it up like dogs.
Pure and utter horse shit. The word ST used in his piece was slurping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Complete and utter. And here we are, 10 or 15 years later, and it's the same thing. We just did a Lone Gunman podcast, me and Joe.
The Ole Damigard thing. Damgard thing or whatever. Yeah. I mean, the horse shittery. You mentioned a thing he did on a Fetzer thing where they're talking about some dude that worked in a restaurant in North Dakota, was Zodiac, and killed Kennedy, and killed RFK, and it's just this fucking nonsense. And I listened very carefully to your episode last Sunday while I ironed my T-shirts. Go ahead and make fun of me now. But I was there live with you. Dude, the horse shittery, the bullshit is...
like I said, he might as well have been Jim Fetzer Jr. because... he's got 13 or 14 shooters in Dealey Plaza named exactly the same people, Jimmy Files and Judy Baker and
unfortunately Rob Reiner and Dick Russell named
Beverly Oliver and all this. I mean, you name every kooky horseshit theory out there, and this is what me and Joe get bumped off of a very famous, nationally recognized podcast done by a pretty famous comedian, get bumped for.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off.
I don't blame you for that bullshit.
Because,
yeah.
And like ST says, it shouldn't bother me that much. And in all reality, it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm over that part of my life where I'm trying to change people's minds by obsessing over things and getting involved. Because, you notice, Doug, I don't post shit. And I don't argue with people in any of the Facebook forums. Every once in a while, I might jump in on the education forum and smack some people around. But
see, I'm like you, man. I accidentally, it was either 2 or 3 years ago when Dr. Newman's book Into the Storm came out. I accidentally got into a nasty back and forth with Lisa Pease because she thinks Wynn Johnson is a credible fucking witness. But
right.
And last year, I had to jump into the education forum to shed some light of critical thought and fucking reality on this coup in Dallas Pierre Lafitte fucking horse twaddle. You know? But other than that, I don't engage either because there's no point. There's no point.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation because you're wasting your time. These people are never going to change their mind. Just like ST said, you can write as many books as you want. You can do as many podcasts as you want. This is why I changed my focus from trying to debunk things and trying to solve the case. And because I think that's an obsession for a lot of people who get involved. They think that, if they research hard enough, they'll figure it out. Well, like ST said, look, there's many people greater than us that have come and gone in this whole thing. And we can sit here all day and name names that we looked up to and idolized and thought they did great work that somebody on the street or your mom or your dad or your sister or your brother and never heard of and doesn't give two flying fucks about.
Amen. Amen, man. And along those lines, dude, I've tried the Dallas action pretty quickly because after we started our podcast, which will be 10 years ago in 2 months. Wow.
Yeah.
You, for the most part, started to stop engaging on social media in that way at that point, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty quick for you, and I followed suit shortly thereafter. And it quickly, it wasn't what that guy's done. And, of course, there's some debunking and disagreeing that goes into what we do. But when I say the Dallas Action is a podcast about the people, places, things, events, and ideas connected to the JFK assassination, that's what I mean. It's evolved into a history podcast, really, that looks at a very niche subject through the prism of the JFK assassination. That's kind of how I see it now. But yeah, man, and
that's exactly how I describe myself to people. I'm a big fish in a very small pond. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, because, look, if you're interested in this subject, you've likely heard of the Dallas Action or Quick Hits or the Lone Gunman podcast. If you haven't, you're under a rock.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Hey, I learned that.
And the numbers
don't lie, do they?
The numbers don't lie. I mean, I can sit here, I'll toot my fucking horn.
Hey.
Over a million downloads in 9 years.
Dude. You check your analytics on Spreaker and you go, damn.
Yeah.
I do too.
Damn, 800 people listened yesterday? Jesus.
Yeah. No shit, dude. Like, I usually, when I'm clicking through news sites and stuff with my morning coffee, I usually click over to the statistics page, and it's like you say, oh, wow, that episode did 400 this week. Wow. That was 3 years ago.
But I guarantee you, it's kind of like, how, we're interested in other things other than the Kennedy assassination, Doug. And I correlate it like this. I don't see the correlation between the number of downloads and listens to the number of people that interact with me about it. So that's where the big drop off is. But I rationalize it this way. I'm interested in a lot of other things other than the Kennedy assassination. Like, take for instance our shared interest in the Biggie and Tupac thing, right?
Hell yeah, man. The whole history.
We pretty much consumed all the media podcasts out there about it, right?
And we're still doing that. Vlad TV uploaded the new interview with Greg Kading this morning. And me and you were talking about it earlier.
Right.
Guys, if you want to know about the history of Death Row Records and the Mob Pyru, you just ask one of us. We could tell you.
Right. But how often, Doug, have you went on a forum or a Facebook group about that and interacted with other people?
Not one time.
How many podcast hosts have you emailed or messaged on social media about this topic?
Not one.
And that's why I think that probably...
But inversely, to prove your point, how many podcast episodes by how many different podcasts about that subject have I enthusiastically downloaded and listened to? A shit ton, bruh.
Yeah, me too.
Hundreds?
Right.
Yeah.
So I figured the same thing is happening for the people listening to our shows.
Damn right.
95% of the people that listen to our shows, they listen for either information, self-realization, information, but they're not obsessed with the topic enough to want to interact and debate and all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I correlate that to people that listen to our show. Like 95% of them probably have never emailed the show, are not our friends on social media, are not in Facebook groups, are not on discussion forums about the subject. And they just listen purely because either the show's entertaining, they like the subject matter, and it's a personal thing for them. It's not, a shared self-righteous, search for the truth or something like that. But, I that's just the way I see it. But getting back to what ST said.
Yeah, and to again, I guess to prove your point, like you say, let's take DJ Quick and Steele's podcast, The Gangster Chronicles, right? Since we're on that subject. When they upload a new episode, I'm going to download it and I'm going to listen to it. But I've never went into a forum and said DJ Quick is wrong about this, or I've never emailed DJ Quick and say, well, tell me about that time you and Snoop were rolling in the red rolls and blah, blah. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to listen. I'm going to move on. Because also on my pod player, in my downloads list, is the Daily Beans, the news show, 20 minutes that I listen to every day. Right?
Yeah.
Also on there is, the latest rewind episode of the late Gilbert Gottfried's podcast. And I might listen to that, I might not. I mean, and a lot of people, our shit is in that mix for people as well. Tell them Steve Dave, the Park After Dark, the Trailer Park Boys. All this stuff is in the mix, and they're not the same. And people, are interested, like you say, they're going to listen to it. They're going to go on with their lives. They're listening,
right,
and they're paying attention. But once it's over, oh, well, can't wait till next month's episode. I got to go to work now. It's they're not like us. We are,
right.
People like
us. I felt
are
very much like St. Patrick described, because I actually met St. in 2019 in Dallas at the conference.
Yeah.
And he was at the Cuckoo conference, though, and I was at the Copa conference, which wasn't too far off of the Cuckoo conference.
The Cuckoo conference?
Yeah, when Oliver Stone was there. It wasn't Lancer, it was Copa in 2019. So things were a little screwy. But I felt the exact same way. You walk into a room of all these people that you've heard of, you've read their books, and they couldn't give two fucks about talking to you, who you were, why you were there. It was like, like he said, it was all about impressing those who are above you in the echelon of JFK research, right?
Or those
not anybody that's interested in spreading information and the truth about the assassination to other people. There was a lot of flags sitting in chairs at that conference that I was at, and
now I got to say this year was a blowout. It was absolutely, like we've discussed it before. Lancer was a huge success, and there were a ton of people, man. And going back to what you were saying about if you're interested in the JFK assassination enough, to join online groups or whatnot, you've heard of the Dallas Action in a Lone Gunman podcast. The number of hands I shook and photos I took over 2.5 days in Dallas, buddy, that is a 100% a testament to that, because there were a lot.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many people.
I had one person who knew who the fuck I was in 2019.
Dude, it's different in 2023, bro. 2024.
And that was my buddy and loyal listener since day one, Greg. And we hung out and we drank beer together and we talked about the assassination. That was it.
Dude.
And he was younger than me. He was probably the youngest one there.
Yeah. Dude, I told you, man.
But other than that,
shit, dude, me and Swanson and Chuck O'Chelly and BP, we got in a Uber, or no, we got in BP's car. We drove down to Dealey Plaza, right? I told you, I got out the car, went to the corner, crossed the street. I was talking to Mike, and down almost right where Vidal and Hargraves or Vidal and Umbrella Man were sitting, man, this dude's head spun around. He goes, "Hey, you're Doug Campbell." I mean, I was at Dealey Plaza literally like 3 fucking minutes, and somebody recognized me by voice.
Yeah,
blew my
rock star status.
Blew my fucking mind. I was like, no way. And I was like, yeah. It's never happened before, like, be recognized in that context. So it took me like a second and a half to snap out and be gracious, because I was like, what the it took me aback.
That's not why we do this.
Right,
you know?
Right. I was like, how does that fucking guy know who the podcast. You know, I mean, literally, that was my reaction. Like, what the fuck? And he's Paul Cummings, great fucking guy. Shout out to Paul. Hope you're doing well, brother. Met him that day, hung with him a little bit that weekend. But yeah. That's not why we do this. So now there are people in this community that when you say, hey, aren't you
John D'Angelo?
They want that. They're all over that shit. Like, yes, I am. Have you read?
Ain't karma a bitch?
Ain't karma a bitch?
Hey, but at least my name didn't get flubbed on a national television news show.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering what that was, that was the, here's the thing. I dropped it on him. He didn't expect it. Yeah. Every now and then, Momo he'll do this thing where this wireless mouse in the vocal booth works, and he gives me control of the soundbite board. So, Rob, are you okay, Rob?
Yeah, I'm okay. I love it. I fucking love it.
As
karma's a bitch.
Now, please, real quick, recap for our lovely listeners the whole story behind Bob.
Yeah, so the whole story behind Bob is that on a certain Canadian assassination broadcast,
Paul White Radio.
And they were talking about us when we were talking about the whole Prouty thing
in a derisive manner.
And he said, because Bob Clark and Doug Campbell, right?
Yeah.
So he called me by the wrong name. He was close, kinda, but still, but for somebody who wants to be all, I'm smarter than everyone else, and I can write this way, and research this way.
Guys, we're talking about the sales manager for Kennedy's and King. That's who we're talking about. Now, the thing about it was, just a few months before this happened, he emailed Rob. You know, when you type in someone's email address, their name pops up, right? He knew his name. He knew your name. He knows your name, and he did.
He knows my name.
But like several months before that, he called you Bob in an email, right? So because Rob Clark is a bad motherfucker, he embraced it, and now everybody loves it. Big Bad Bob. Now, what this soundbite you guys just heard,
John D'Angelo.
I can't hear that enough.
He was asked to be on Fox News around the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, because he's the foremost expert on the JFK assassination, folks.
And this is noted Fox News goddamn dingbat Brian Kilmeade trying to say his name. Listen.
John D'Angelo is the writer behind Oliver Stone's documentary JFK Revisited.
You know what I love about that?
Not only did he fuck up the last name, but he called him John.
But listen close, okay? Listen.
John D'Angelo.
Did you hear the breath he just gave the fuck up. He went. It was like a breath where there's a pause where he takes a breath. Listen.
John D'Angelo.
That was, oh, fuck it. He went, John did, oh, fuck it. Cangelo, fuck it, man. He just gave up. He just gave the fuck up.
Yeah. I mean, that's fucking classic. We are going to wear that fucking thing out, boy. That button is going to be fucking rubbed raw.
As a matter of fact, we vowed never to use his real name again. For you guys. Now, look, man, speaking of
John D'Angelo,
this part of ST's commentary where he spoke of people who, will do interviews and they ask, what are the best books to read? And, he made an allusion to someone who says, well, mine, right?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
If you go to Kennedy's and King,
over here, bro. I'm sorry.
If you go to Kennedy's and King right now, right? If you go to Kennedy's and King, Mr.
John D'Angelo,
he has his top 10 books ever written on the JFK assassination on his website, right? And and he's the self-styled lead literary critic of this community, right? He positioned himself,
John D'Angelo,
as the go-to literary critic for the assassination research community. And when you go there, 3 of his books are on his list. 3 of his own books are on his list. And
well, he still has a garage full of them to sell, man.
Well, I know. But I think about it like, okay, if you look at this building that I work in, right, it's full of sound engineers, award-winning audio engineers, right? Now, if a trade publication, right, were to ask 10 of them to name the top 10 engineered songs, country music songs of 2023, and they're going to put it in their trade publication. We interviewed, right? We'll say we interviewed, I'll make up a name, Joe Silva, engineer at such and such studios who works for this person, this person, this person. Now imagine they asked you to make that ballot, right? The top 10 best sounding songs. This is for a trade publication for sound engineers. Now imagine John Silva turns in a list and 4 fucking John Silva songs are on there. The trade publication wouldn't even publish it. They'd go ask somebody else. They got, goddamn, fuck this dick. I mean, not that I'm calling
John D'Angelo
a dick. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just using that as an example. But now I made a couple of notes here based on ST's thing. The Rob Reiner thing, I did listen to the last episode. I do agree with ST. It was not made for people like us. But when it comes to the last episode where they named the shooters, quote unquote, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. They got one shooter from each little milieu. They got a Cuban, Herminio Diaz-Garcia. They got a mafia guy, Chuck Nicoletti. Who were the other? They left James Files out, thank God.
Jean-Paul Sartre. But if you have Nicoletti there, you got Files there. So
yeah.
Just because they didn't say his name doesn't mean that they're not inferring that.
Yeah, Swatra. Oh, and to the listener who sent me a 17-line paragraph on how to pronounce that name, I didn't even read the email. I scanned it, saw what it was. I didn't even get to the end where you corrected me. I didn't even fuck it. You know what I'm saying? But I just want you to know I didn't read it. But and Jack Cannon as the shooters. I was really. This thing
Who's
had
Jack Cannon?
Man. Well, maybe we'll look into it later on another episode and see what.
Sounds like a porn star name.
Sounds like a porn star name.
Starring Jack Cannon with his 10-inch cock.
Yeah, maybe I'll check one of the books written by
John D'Angelo.
When I get home.
Shit.
Oh wait, I don't have any of them. I'm sorry. But it had promise. This Rob Reiner Dick Russell thing, but some things land like an atom bomb, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to imagine a feather drifting down and coming to rest on a Tempur-Pedic mattress. And that's how this Who Killed JFK ultimately landed.
Yeah. Rob Reiner, leave it to the professionals.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave it to the people who've done actual...
Go direct a sequel to The Princess Bride.
He said that podcast series was the most comprehensive deep dive ever done on the JFK assassination in podcast form. 12 episodes, less than 30 minutes each. My ass, brother. My ass. You have, like I said, man, no idea.
Wow.
Brother. All I can tell you.
I mean, get the hell out of here with that.
For real, man. Jesus. But a couple of other points. This limited hangout thing he said, if truth is ever known, each faction's going to say, well, that's just a limited hangout. I agree with him 100%. If we ever did learn the truth, 50% of people would stand up and go, that's bullshit because it's not my guy. I agree with that 100%. We'll never come to a consensus on the truth, even if we know the truth. I agree. Yeah. Oh, and the thing he was talking about authors that get like high and mighty during interviews and shit. Well, buy the book, read the book, buy the book, read the book. There's one very notable author in the field, and
I know one off the top of my head.
It's probably the same one I'm thinking about, but I heard him go on an episode years ago of Popeye, Down the Rabbit Hole of Popeye. Every question Popeye asked him, well, if you buy my book, if you buy my book, you'll get the... So I sent him a message one day, sent him an email to ask him a question about a certain secret. almost gave away who I was talking about there. Asked him a question about an individual, and it was too specific to be any random question about this individual to have been in his book. But what he said was, well, if you buy my last book, I talked about that guy in there. Not even I answered that question in there. Just, if you buy my book, I talked about him in there. And I made up my mind that day he'll never appear on any fucking podcast I produce ever. I don't give a shit if he...
Hi, Joan Mellon. Hi.
Wasn't her, but...
Oh, it's her for me.
Well, this dude will... I don't give a shit if he wins a Pulitzer. He'll never be on the Dallas Action. I mean, that was just some bullshit. But
that was the worst episode of the Lone Gunman podcast ever recorded.
And
the shortest.
I disagree. It was the funnest if you're a listener. I promise. Yeah, but that guy that William Pepper. I'm talking about William Pepper, the guy that has something to do with the Martin Luther King assassination or whatever. I heard him on an episode of Beyond Reality podcast years ago with Jason Hawes, the guy that used to be with Ghost Hunters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this podcast, they did 5 episodes a week, right? Hour long, 2 to 3 had an author of a book, right? They're going through people, right? So they're in the middle of this interview and they're asking the guy questions. Well, he got fucking mad. And he literally said something to the effect of like, what is this, kindergarten? Blah, 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 blah. You're asking me. Dude, it was so funny. So funny. Jason Hawes cut his old ass off right off the bat. He goes, hey, listen, pal. We're allowing you to be here, a platform to promote your book. We have 2, 3, sometimes 4 authors a week. You think I can read that many books in a week? Really? We're asking questions, hoping people get interested in your book. If you don't want that, we can end this shit right now. It was so goddamn funny, man. It was so funny. Homie calmed way down and was way more compliant at that point. So, but anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, that's ST. Thank you for that contribution to Quick Hits. So much, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Excellent work.
Bring another one. Buddy.
Hell yeah.
And look, there were parts of that made me go, oh, well, you know what? He's talking about, like, getting defensive when you get cognitive dissonance, right? That I do that. I'm fully aware that I do it. And it you know what? If you consider yourself like part of the JFK assassination research community, if there was nothing about that made you uncomfortable, if there was no part of that, what you just heard, that made you a little uncomfortable because it was kind of like looking in the mirror, then you're not being intellectually honest with yourself. And you probably insist that Ed Lansdale was in Dealey Plaza.
Amen, brother.
Can I get a come on?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to take a big deep breath, and I think I want to kick back and maybe hit this vape and let Rob read some emails. What do you think, Rob?
Let's do it.
Hey!
Oh, yes, wait a minute, Mr. Bozeman.
Emails. Go ahead, sir.
All right, let me reach down here in my bag and feel around a little bit.
Fondle that sack and find that package, Rob.
Ooh, that kind of scrape the inside of the sack there on that one.
Read this one slow. I got to walk like 20 feet to hit this vape. I'll be right back.
Oh, this is a good one. Hello, friend. Hope this message finds you well. I'm Zoe from Fit T4 Sports, a company specializing in sportswear. We are finding equestrian influencers to send free samples of our riding breeches in exchange for doing a video on your YouTube account. I came across your podcast and was so impressed by your creative content. Below are more details of this campaign. Blah, 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 blah. Would you kindly share your idea about whether you are interested in it or not? Can't wait to hear from you. Warm regards, Zoe.
Sponsorship?
Well, I think Zoe misheard a couple of our shows in which we said the word horse shit one too many times, Doug, and thinks that we could possibly be an equestrian-related podcast.
Oh, no.
Now, are you in need of any riding breeches? Because we could probably get some samples for free. The only downside is we'd have to do a YouTube video about it, which would be kind of funny.
Oh,
if
dude.
either one of us had horses.
Dude, how much it pay? How much?
Nothing.
34. Oh, fuck them. I was going to say, I wear 34 32s. We'll do the video. Hell yeah. I'll wear them dungarees for some cash.
We just get free riding breeches.
Okay, I'm in. What about crops? Do they have riding crops?
I'm sure they do.
Do they have whips?
I'm sure they do.
Do they have spurs?
I'm sure they do.
So you're saying, so she must have heard us say horse shit?
Apparently, that's the only horse-related thing that we ever say on this show.
Yes, man. We must have been talking about...
John D'Angelo.
You think?
Probably so. I think we said it a few times this episode regarding John. Next up, we have an email from Tom Braun. Strong name.
Sounds like a big old boy. Hey,
Yeah.
how big a boy are you?
How big a boy are you?
How big a boy are you? Hell, it ain't enough for me to whoop a man's ass. Perhaps you've heard of me.
I used to wear those tapes out, man.
Oh, man, be riding down the road and laughing so hard you can't hardly drive, dude.
Oh.
Straight up.
Bob and Doug, if this crazy assassination story was really about a lone nut, then why all of the hiding behind, quote, national security and the nefarious behavior of our government for 60 years?
Because it's not really a lone nut, sir.
Right. Multiple investigations that finally did conclude that it was actually a conspiracy, and then no further action has been taken since then. It smells rotten.
That's
that
because
was almost 50
it is
years ago.
That is because it is rotten.
Still, here we sit.
Yep.
If it was rogue elements that pulled this conspiracy together, it has been a full-on cover-up by almost every facet of this government since.
Yep.
I don't know about that. When you're saying cover-up, I think, and it wasn't necessarily because they did it. I think it was more of a cover your ass
100%. 100%. There's just too much shit that would have had to come out in the open as a result of, you know.
Why didn't the CIA know this about this guy? Why didn't they ring the alarm bells? Why didn't the FBI watch this guy? Why didn't they detain him? there's 1,000 scenarios here that every official government agency would not want to touch Lee Harvey Oswald with a 10-foot pole, even if they weren't associated with him.
But man, and imagine, if you will, if you're even a little bit intellectually honest, imagine the result if they would have been honest and had to admit how they were connected to Oswald, the fake defection, the watching him, keeping tabs on him. Can you imagine if they would have admitted that in 1964?
Right.
Oh, my God. I mean.
And even if they had operational, even if it was a CIA operation, when you're talking about the defection, or even if he was an FBI informant in New Orleans.
Pillars would have fallen, dude.
Yeah.
There's no way they're going to. What we know now about what they knew then about Oswald, there is no way in hell they're going to admit that in 1964. They won't even admit it now.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
They were exactly like Bill Frazier. They wanted to distance themselves from Lee Harvey Oswald as much as possible.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the size of relief within government when Ruby popped Oswald?
I'm sure.
Oh, my God. Now we can cover this shit up. Nobody can know he's our guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's see. Suspicious deaths aside, all the statistical impossibilities is in fact proof. The intelligence and law enforcement agencies have worked for 60 years to disappear evidence, witnesses, and troves of documents, and concocted the craziest fringe theories, ultimately to muddy the waters. Finally, my question: why hasn't there been more focus on a 7.65 Mauser? It was exclusively reported the first full day following the assassination, and then it just disappeared. Any of your thoughts would be appreciated. One last question: can AI be used to assist in solving our great puzzle?
Nah.
To just scratch the surface, is it possible to do a DNA test on the chicken bones found in the sniper's nest? Thank you for keeping this discussion alive, and I would be remiss not to mention that seeking the truth in this matter is a very noble pursuit. The government works for us, citizens, and they have clearly forgotten that. God be with you, Tom Braun.
You're 100% right about that last point, Mr. Tom. I agree. They have absolutely forgotten that. There was a presentation by two hosts of a YouTube channel that have glommed on to assassination research in the last 12 months dealing with AI and the assassination. I skipped that shit, went down to Dealey Plaza with Monica Perez Jimenez and Joe Borelli. So, I don't know nothing about it, bro.
Yeah, in fact, if you were at the conference, you may have heard this, directed at those very folks.
Nobody can hear! Hey! Nobody can hear! Nobody can hear! There's 100 people here. There's 10 over there. None of us can hear because of you guys. Come on, please! Yours goes forward. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
If you've ever wondered what telling a drunk to shut the fuck up sounds like in practical application, there it is.
There it is.
There it is.
Now, to answer your other questions here, Tom, about the 7.65 Mauser, there's lots of weapons, as we talked about on this episode, that have come and gone and were mentioned. The 303. What is it called? Enfield. Yeah, 303 Enfield. The 7.65, the 6.5 Mauser. It just goes on and on. But and if what we talked about earlier on this show is true, it had to be settled upon that this rifle is the one that did the shooting. So, that's why it was a multi-conglomerate, cover your ass type of thing. And they had to go in certain directions. So, and as far as AI goes, my view on AI is the problem with AI. Like, Doug, I asked AI to help me design a logo for the Lone Gunman podcast. Okay?
Yeah.
And I asked it to include certain elements, including Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby, a rifle, shooting, Dallas, Dealey Plaza, all these prompts, right, that you can put in there, and they're supposed to be able to, design a logo. It can't do it. It won't do it. Here's what it says. This period in history is too sensitive of a subject and would be too disrespectful to the Kennedy family to do anything like that. So if you go to AI, even Chat 4 GPT, you say, hey, write me a song about the Kennedy assassination. It won't do it.
Hey, dude, about a year and a half ago, when all this sort of popped up, the AI, you put in prompts and make art.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Hunter showed it to me one day, my son, and I said, try magic bullet theory. And the thing that came up was fucking rad, homie. It had a bullet, like American flag motif, a black limousine, and tall buildings. Like a really
but it's not
shiny
dead
bullet.
on. It's not accurate.
But it was.
It's cool design. I got a bunch of cool designs, but like when I was trying to make the Dago episode, I put in all the prompts of his characteristics that we finally knew. Like his hair color and hairstyle, his dark ruddy complexion, his tight pants from the 70s. I was putting all these prompts in, to try. I must have went through 30 prompts, to try to get the final image of Dago that I settled on. But it can be a good tool, to help you out. But I don't think that it's going to be solving the assassination. And I seriously doubt they have them chicken bones anymore. And at this point, I don't know what you could. I don't know if any DNA would be left on them.
I think you're out of chicken luck there, pal.
Right. All right. Thank you, Tom, for that. Next up, our buddy, Mr. Paul Vines.
Hey, Mr. Paul, what's up?
Sir Douglas and Earl Robert. Gentlemen, I don't have the panache of your normal email participants, but here it goes. I love all three shows, and I listen to back episodes of all three shows every day while I work. I know, we love you, Paul. I have a few questions for you. Did anyone ever check the ballistics on Ruby's gun against the bullets found in Tippit? Is it true that Robert Oswald was in Mexico at or around the same time as Lee? And whatever happened to Patricia Anderson from the Facebook groups? All right. So first up, I don't think anybody
that
did the ballistics from Ruby's gun to the ones found in Tippit. I don't think that was ever done.
Homie, what a hell of a good question.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it could be done post-haste now that we have the ballistics from, when he shot Lee Oswald and when somebody shot Tippit. We have the shells, we have the rifling marks or whatever, supposed. So I'm sure it could be done if somebody had the tenacity to do it. Robert, I don't know if Robert Oswald was in Mexico at or around the same time as Lee. I don't think he was at that time. I mean, I don't know what business he would have had in Mexico.
I don't believe I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
Sounds like another one of those Ole things.
Yeah. I think he was working at the brick company, the Acme Brick Company in Denton. And whatever happened to Patricia Anderson from the Facebook groups? Well, from what I remember about her, she was a kooky lady who claimed to have all kinds of information about the assassination.
I don't even remember the name, man. Honestly.
Yeah. And nobody really believed anything she said. But I remember her profile picture was of an older lady. So sadly, Paul, she has probably passed away. If that was a accurate picture of her, or she has simply disappeared back to wherever she came from after nobody was listening to what she had to say. And put any,
or perhaps in 2016, the Russian troll farm told whoever Patricia Anderson was to direct her attention toward the U.S. election. That's possible, too.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Paul. Good to hear from you, bro. For real. Man, he's been since day one, dude. Paul, I think he was like the first listener that I maybe became aware of online that listened to the podcast back in the day. No shit.
Right, yeah. He's OG.
OG, man. This is when I say at the beginning of each episode, when you hear the voice say, this is dedicated to the homies that's been down since day one.
That means you, Paul.
Paul is one of them few homies.
That's right. All right, next up, from another homie, from Lisa. Hey, Rob and Doug. Lisa here. TikTok Lisa from the TLG episode on the Mandela effect. Yeah.
What up, Lisa? Hello.
I decided to do something impulsive and fly from New York to Dallas for a day trip on November 22nd, 2023, this past year. And just walk around and see all the sites associated with the assassination.
Oh, did she see all the crazies?
I had only been once before, but I was there for business and had only seen Dealey Plaza at night. It was extremely eye-opening to just walk the plaza and look at things from all different angles. I totally agree, Lisa. Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Yep. When you finally get to do it. It seemed like I was surrounded by people who all had the same look as me, just wandering around and wondering what happened. Who was over here? What did it feel like to be here on that day? Aside from James Files ruining the vibe by attracting a crowd on the grassy knoll, making it difficult for me to stay there for long, I had a great time. I wrote in my travel journal some thoughts about the experience, and here are some of my thoughts. Number 1, I've always believed that the background of the Zapruder film was zoomed in and altered. However, after actually standing up where Zapruder stood filming, I do not believe that is the case. People look strangely disproportionately large from here.
Hey, I did not crawl up there. I did not get up there, but Monica and Joe did. I think I took their picture while they were up there.
Yeah. You're dealing with these old cameras, these old movie cameras, and I'm sure things like the optics, if you're focused on something, as he was on the limousine, that, the background becomes probably a little distorted or enlarged versus, what the lens of the camera is supposed to be capturing. And I agree, Lisa. I think, I don't think there's any foolery going on there in the background. There would just be too much fakery to do that. I mean,
yeah.
Number 2, I think Lee Bowers was probably the most important witness to the grassy knoll and the events leading up to and after the assassination in that area. That vantage point is unparalleled, so now I'd like to go back and reread some of his testimony and statements. I agree.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of bothered me when I was, is when you look at that, when you stand there, like we were standing like right at twilight, like right behind the picket fence, or right, and I'm thinking, I was bothered by the amount of the little bit of ambiguity in what Lee Bowers said. Like standing there looking at that, you're thinking you ought to be able to. Well, this guy had on black shoes and brown pants, and and this guy did. Yeah. Like, how did you miss anything? But I also remember that he had a whole lot of shit going on. He's not always looking 100% of the time. He's working, man. He's operating that shit. You know what I'm saying?
And that was going to be my next comment was, he was probably the most important witness if he was looking and paying attention to what was going on. We don't know that he 100% was doing that. You know what I mean? He might have said he was, but how do we know for certain?
His job was a busy job in that tower. He's directing traffic. He's
like an air traffic controller for railroads.
Right, man.
You can't take your attention away from things like that, or you're going to have kerfluffles going on all around you.
All around you.
And you will be fired. And one thing that did surprise me, Doug, when you're actually there in person and you're at the grassy knoll fence and you turn around and look at Lee Bowers Tower, it's further away than I thought it was.
Yes. And I'll tell you something else. The terrain is flatter.
Yeah.
Back there.
It's totally flat.
I was thinking there was, the first time I went back there, it's pretty flat, but it looks like it's probably been paved over a few times. So, if you go back to, we know it's been paved, but probably several times. So the elevations are going to be smaller in that parking lot area or lower. than it was in 63, but by how much? Probably not much, 6-8 inches maybe. But for some reason, before I went to Dealey Plaza, I was under the impression that there was an incline from the tower to the fence. Like that there was an up, and there really isn't. It's pretty damn flat. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it would have to be, for him to see all the rail lines and everything going on from up there. Yeah. But yeah, I agree totally. And then number 3, she says the infamous badge man, I think it's implausible unless he was extremely short. I stood in the exact same spot and the cement wall just barely hit my waist and I'm 5'8". Yep. Number 4, the second floor of the Dow Tex building does not seem like a good location for a shooter. I think it's most plausible that was the main radio communications hub, as the person or persons there could clearly see all the other locations where shooters supposedly were.
Well, every shooter's probably going to have a spotter, but it does make sense, Lisa, that there's going to be a spotter kind of overseeing the whole thing from an elevated position. Yeah. And then, of course,
and in radio communications, for sure.
Right. And you've got your guys on the ground, which are Umbrella Man and Vidal Santiago, and you've got maybe this guy up at Dowtex, like she says.
And you got George Bush and Chucky Nicoletti in the Dowtex building, along with 2 other people in a closet.
Marina Oswald in the storm drain. How does that work now again?
Yeah. Number 5, I was not able to access the county records building or the county jail from the inside, but the only place it makes sense for a shooter to be in either of those buildings is on the roof. I can't see a more plausible trajectory than that. Agreed. Number 6, I think the triple underpass is the most overlooked in all of Dealey Plaza. We've heard the theories of shooters being under the underpass on street level, but after walking it and checking different locations, I don't see it as a good vantage point. However, the actual top of the underpass, the overpass, is extremely plausible to me. The view of Dealey Plaza and the motorcade from the southernmost point of the triple underpass where it hits the South Knoll was pretty unbelievable. A shooter in that location would have had a clear view of the limousine for all of the shots fired, as well as a clear line of sight to the grassy knoll. The only problem I see with this, Lisa, is there was a lot of people up on that overpass who would have seen and heard things, and there were, but none of them were drawn to the area of the South Knoll. All of them were drawn to the grassy knoll. For whatever reason, whether it's sounds or people or smoke or whatever, all of the witnesses up there, and I believe there's even 2 Dallas cops up there, were drawn, a lot of railroad workers, they were drawn to the grassy knoll area. Number 7, I took a tour to all the sites in the Oswald timeline, 10th and Patton. I remembered an eyewitness account that Helen Markham maybe had seen a DPD vehicle in the alleyway between the 2 houses just before Tippett was killed, and perhaps that either was Tippett at his mistress's house or it was a DPD who set up the Tippett murder. I find that to be extremely plausible. A car could easily slip in and out of the alleyway without being seen by witnesses who saw the shooting. Agreed. Yep. I was really hoping to see the new Oswald exhibit at the UNT Law School, which was formerly the jail where Oswald was held and shot by Ruby. Unfortunately, it wasn't open to the public. Anyway, the trip was eye-opening and I wanted to share, but I was too busy up until now. Thanks for always putting out quality content. Enjoy your holidays. We did, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa, thank you so much for writing and sharing your observations, your notes, your thoughts. That was very cool. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, very, very astute and on the money, my girl. All right, next up, we got email from Tim Huey, I think. As soon as radio reports started rolling in on the 22nd, we heard that a, quote, Secret Service agent had been killed. 6 decades later, we have no confirmation or denial. This angle is Vince Palomares, but even his comments are as satisfying as one potato chip.
Damn.
I'm sure some of those sources have died by now. Oh, for one of the 2 to have been E. Howard Hunt moment where he went off like Adrian Monk on TV saying, "Here's what happened. Apparently, the status quo and protecting it is more important than the truth. Thanks always, Tim. Yeah, now that's an interesting angle when you're talking about the reports of a Secret Service agent being either shot or killed in Dealey Plaza. That is true. Those reports were out there.
Yeah.
Where they came from, I have no idea.
On network TV, even.
And people try to say there was a blood stain up on the grassy knoll, and some people say no, it was a bottle of cherry cola that somebody had dropped on the sidewalk.
Didn't I hear a pool of blood next to a pistol? There's that story. There was a pool of blood and a .38.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I've read that somewhere. Based on that Rob Reiner thing, probably in a Dick Russell book.
It would make sense if the Secret Service took ownership of a rifle found near the grassy knoll or in Dealey Plaza, and one of their agents had been killed that we don't know about.
Damn, that still got me all like, damn, man.
I know. It's crazy.
Crazy. Never heard it before.
All right. Next up, we have one from the Hood. Hold on. The Hood Airy Cat. The Hood Airy Cat.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. If we think about all the great podcasters in the world, they all have one thing in common, and that is a stellar YouTube presence, Doug. With the number of downloads and reviews you are at after 54 episodes of your tremendous podcast, it is safe to say you are leaving behind a large amount of engagement on the table by not leveraging YouTube optimization. Blah, blah, blah. Go screw yourself, the Hood. We don't need your help.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
We're good.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
Gently. With a garden
With
rake.
a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Oh. Man, we are dangerous.
This is fun shit, ain't it, though?
I know.
Yeah.
Next up, an email from TC.
TC.
Yeah.
Where's Rick, TC?
Hi, Rob. I discovered your podcast, Alone Gunman, in early 2023. I had been listening to The Enduring Secret by Jeff Crudell and Solving JFK by Matt Crumpton when a simple search on the podcast page showed similar presentations. After catching up with the first two podcasts, I felt I needed to expand, so I decided to give your podcast a shot. I have been listening religiously ever since and have gone back and listened through most of your earlier podcasts. Through yours, I also discovered Quick Hits and the Dallas Action. I walk a lot, find I have more peace of mind when doing so, which makes it perfect for me to focus on a topic I've been following up since the late 70s, namely the JFK assassination. You and Doug have a very entertaining style of podcasting on such a serious matter. I have found the material you both present to be both factual and informative. I have learned new stuff that I had not been aware of before. And your constant stressing of going back to primary sources and checking documents to verify whatever position or argument is commendable. Having been to Dallas countless times, I never tire of learning anything that comes up in the research community. I first started this journey at a time when the only sources of JFK-related material was either the local library or corresponding by snail mail with other researchers. The internet has been a huge blessing for serious students like myself. Primary source material is so much more easier to find and catalog, and listening to folks like you and Doug only makes the experience that much more enriching. Hopefully one day I will have the pleasure of making both of your acquaintances at a conference somewhere. Until then, keep up the good work and fight the good fight. Regards, TC Tony Cavallari. P.S. The rock music both you guys preface a lot of your episodes with brings back a lot of memories of the time when rock was king. I have to be careful on my walks that I don't start playing air guitars or beating invisible drum sets. Thank you, TC.
Hey, I am the Neil Peart of air drums, bro. There's no shame in it. Play those air drums, man.
That's right.
Hell yeah. As a matter of fact, play them to Frankenstein by Edgar Winter next time you're on your walk, man.
Yes, and my guy Roger greatly appreciates you jamming out to his tunes.
Hell yeah.
All right, next up, and that's our last one, Doug, is from Rich Kagan.
Rich Kagan. Hello, Rich Kagan.
Rob Clark and Doug Campbell.
That's us.
I'm Rich Kagan. I've been in the media business for 30 plus years. I'm writing to you because I would love to be considered as a guest for Quick Hits JFK assassination news and analysis.
Okay.
You've got a phenomenal podcast on your hands, fellas.
Thank you.
Would this be of value to you and your audience?
Okay.
Here's a quick little bio about me.
Pause,
Rich
Rob.
Kagan.
Pause, Rob.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, we know this about ourselves. Impress us. Wow us. Show us what you got. What's up?
Yes. Thank you for the slurping, Rich. Now, here's a quick little bio about Rich. I've been stirring the media pot for 30 years, so long I can't believe it's not burnt. Ha! Number 2, I've done a gig as the VP of Sales at CBS Radio and TV in LA, and even birthed the Howard Stern ad network, all before Howard made his big move to Sirius XM Radio.
Hey,
Tons
dude,
of wild
I gotta tell you,
stories here.
I gotta tell you, I'm not a Howard Stern fan.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice is the best thing to ever come out of that hot mess. I'm telling you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Number 3, I ran my own show at Wingman Media, a direct response agency. My mission, getting my clients rock bottom cost per acquisition rates. Number 4, I love traveling, eating, golfing, skiing, surfing, and playing the blues on harmonica like John Popper. I've got 3 kids under 13, and I live in Manhattan Beach, Florida. California.
Van down by the river.
Here are a few topics that I can discuss. Would any of these topics benefit your audience? Number 1, I can dive into the world of media, explaining how anyone can leverage it for boosting their business.
Rob?
Let's explore. Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, you read off each thing, and then we'll decide. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Let's explore how your audience can turn the media game to their favor.
What do you think, Rob? Is that a topic for us?
That's a negative.
That's a negative, yeah.
Number 2, I can share my adventure of building and growing a diverse agency from scratch. From tech to mattresses to mortgages, I've served clients in every niche, and I've even sold an agency that I built from the ground up. Ready to hear the inside scoop?
Sure.
I'll pass. Number 3.
I mean, we'll pass. I thought he that he was about to give us the inside scoop with the next paragraph.
Oh no, he's got to come on the show to do that.
Yeah. If he makes it.
Number 3, I can talk about my experience in building a team that excels in creating high-performing media. Content is my forte. I can share insights and strategies on how to assemble and nurture such a team.
I don't think so, bro.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
Number 4, I can talk about the wild stories that have come up from my Howard Stern days. Only if they involve Beetlejuice fucking
Robin.
stuttering John. Number 5.
If you got any stories that involves Robin's boobs, then email us that, and if we approve, we'll read it. How about that? Yeah.
Number 5, the secrets the biggest media companies use behind direct response copywriting and advertising. Sounds like a snooze fest, Doug. If you would allow me to be a guest on your podcast, we will also be sure to send it out to my email list of 10,000 plus people and promote your show. Here's my website. Thank you for taking the time to read my proposal. Hey, no problem, Rich. Let me know if you're interested in having me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. With sincerity, Rich Kagan.
Holy sweet.
Well, Rich, I would take that as the answer. No, we will pass.
Yeah, we're good, bro. We're good.
I just don't think it'd be a good fit.
Don't think it would.
Yeah,
he didn't say Oswald or Zapruder film or anti-Castro at all in any of that thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could at least talk about the media and CIA Mockingbird operations and the role that the media played in the Kennedy assassination. I mean, come on, man.
Come on, dude. It would be like me.
You're smarter than that.
Me contacting a podcast about aluminum siding, offering to tell them about the Garrison investigation. Bro, no.
Or talking about a fiction book.
Yeah, it would be like me going on a podcast and yelling at a 13-year-old book about time travel because it's not factually accurate.
But anyway, that's all the emails we have today. If you would like for us to read and comment on your emails, please send them to quickhitsjfk@gmail.com, and we will read them live right here on the show and give you answers and commentary that you probably didn't ask for. But the email bag is now empty.
The email bag is empty. We are up against the clock. There's the music. Rob, why don't you begin to take us on out of here, brother?
Yeah, folks, if you want to follow the show, head to Spreaker. If you want the auditory version of the Lone Gunman podcast, if you want to see your boy in person, along with my co-host Joe Borelli, head over to YouTube and search for the Lone Gunman podcast, and make sure you subscribe and like all the episodes and click the little bell to get notified about when we go live. We do the live show every weekend, so make sure you tune in for that if you're interested. Doug.
Thank you, sir. And you cannot find my podcast, The Dallas Action, presented by Wall Street Window, on YouTube, but you can find it on literally hundreds of thousands of podcast apps and networks and websites from here to the Orion Nebula. It is ongoing critical thought, study, and analysis of the people, places, things, events, and ideas connected and related to the conspiracy that murdered John F. Kennedy. Forward-moving, forward-thinking historical research of the JFK assassination, Rob, that features resources and ideas that originated post-1998. Hey,
John D'Angelo.
Do you think you could maybe possibly try using some shit that's post-1998?
I can't.
Oh my God.
Like this show, ladies and gentlemen, of the Dallas Action is another fine show from Drop D Podcast Productions in the heart of Music Row, Music City, USA. So for Rob Clark and Momo Scaranucci, this is Doug Campbell saying tune in again next time when, after 5.5 straight weeks of constant ball breaking from me and Rob about crashing that scooter in Dallas, we'll hear Joe Borelli say,
life with y'all sucks.
We are out.
Oh, shit. Oh, my God. That's much better than the first take.
Le croissant.